Hey everyone, guess what? We do not have ugly swag. We have spaced out radio gear that you're going to want to wear. Why? Because no one wants to wear ugly clothing. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com and go shopping today. You'll be glad you did. And it's a great way to support our show. Once you get your gear, send us a picture of you rocking out in your SOR swag. spacedoutradio.com, shop there today, and make yourself look good.
Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. Guess what? It's going to be a fantastic show. There was a documentary that came out on Friday, little documentary called The Age of Disclosure. We'll be talking about that in more hours 1 and 2, and maybe even 3 with the panel, with the home panel here, home team panel. We'll be getting started here in just a few minutes. I'll say call out names during the first break. We're getting ready to get into it right about now. Greetings, space travelers. Welcome home. You've just tuned your dial to Spaced Out Radio, the only place where you can own the night. I'm your host, Mr. Rob G. And tonight, we're broadcasting on the terrestrial affiliates across North America, plus digitally on digital platforms all around the world. Don't forget, you can access our archives absolutely free. youtube.com/@spacedoutradio. And hey, while you're there, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to follow us on X and Instagram at Spaced Out Radio and at Spaced Out Radio Show. The website is spacedoutradio.com, where the options are endless. You can stay up to date with SR Newswire. You can get yourself some official Spaced Out swag. Plus, you can rock out to the man you hear right there, Mr. Ron Bubble Football, and oh so much more. Once again, it's going to be a fantastic show here tonight. We're going to be doing an Age of Disclosure review here for hours 1 and 2. You know, it's the premier documentary right now. You know, a lot of people stepped into this, and, you know, I've heard other reviews. I've heard people talk about that, but it's not going to be like tonight's review. We're going to definitely dive deep. You know, a lot of people, because they're looking for brand new revelations, which I think there were some in there, and we'll probably be talking about those. But you know, I think it's been, for some people, it's been given an unfair shake. So let's go ahead and kind of jump into this conversation and talk with our panel here, none other than our guys. You know this guy, Drew Banky.
What?
And then you know this guy too, Josh Rutledge, the UFO.
Hey, what's going on?
Yes, Josh Rutledge, Drew Banky, Age of Disclosure. It's out, Amazon Prime. I'm not selling it. So if your friend rented it, go and watch it there, but definitely I think it's something that if you're within the subject or even coming into the subject for the first time, this is the perfect thing for you. What did you guys think about it? What were some of your opinions on it before we get into breaking this down? You can go, Josh.
My initial opinion was that it's a really good recap of everything that has happened as it relates to disclosure since 2017. And like you said, Rob, it's like if you're just now getting into it and you're like, what are the state of things? It's a good documentary for that.
Very, very well said. Drew Banky, you saw it as well. I know you tweeted me. You were like, I'm watching it right now. I'm watching it right now on Friday. What is the quick opinion about what you thought about it?
Yeah, it was a good recap. And for people out there, hitting the mainstream that's scrolling on Amazon looking for something to get on that may not known about some of these cases, the biologicals and Holloman Air Force Base and all these other things. They really laid it out in a way you can digest it. And I think Elizondo, like with the chalkboard thing, like really laid it out where people can like see, breakdown of why this phenomenon is getting so much attention. So I think it was great. And I'm definitely looking forward to the next installment of it.
And, I really think it was something because I always talk about 2025 turned out to be an awesome year. I really still feel that way, and it's still got a month or so to go. A lot of stuff happened, but I really feel like this is like the precursor to 2026, and I think this is going to take us in, give us that momentum. And as you both said, this is definitely one of those pieces where, and this is something I always say, and you can agree, you've heard me say this a million times before. We're used to dealing with information separately, sporadically. So this sighting here, that sighting there, this happened here, right? And they're all decent events and big events. But then when you collectively take everything and put it in one place, you get to see what the big picture is. And that's kind of what people can walk away from this with, even if you've been in the UFO community, all this stuff. I bet you didn't know some of the stuff, and I bet you didn't see it as you see it with everything concisely put in one place. Mm-hmm. So good job to Dan Farah, and I think Lou Elizondo had help doing that as well. And let me ask you this before we actually dive into it. Did you see the recent episode of the Y-Files where they talked about PSYOPs?
I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, just give you a brief thing here. And I like the Y-Files. I'm a viewer of it. But they put out he put out a video here recently where I guess Sean Ryan is doing this new PSYOP podcast, and AJ was covering it on Y-Files, and it was essentially a test that you can use, bullet points to where you can grade each of these whistleblowers to determine if it's likely a PSYOP. Right. And so he went through Grush and he went through some of this stuff and he was like, yeah, the score says that it's likely a PSYOP. And so I just found that kind of funny that it came right before, this documentary comes out. I don't know if the two things are related. I don't know why they would have positioned that PSYOP show and then shown some of the people who appeared in the Age of Disclosure, like David Grush and Jake Barber, actually, who wasn't in Age of Disclosure, but they included him as well. And they were kind of making the point that the people that they highlighted in that Y-Files episode likely participated in a PSYOP, willingly or unwillingly. So I think when you put that out there, it kind of attempts to take the steam out of what it was that was presented. But I had to put that out there because I know there's definitely people that have seen that episode, and I recommend you go watch it so you have your own opinion. But jumping into the Age of Disclosure, so some of the things that stood out, what would be, if you had to pick one of the biggest moments of the documentary that kind of had you like, wow, what would that have been, Josh?
Well, I gotta be, this is gonna sound probably not great, but there was no real wow moment for me in the documentary. Everything that they talked about, I'd heard or researched on my own up until that point. There was with the different books that have been written, since 2017 or even a couple of years before, in all the different interviews and the UAP hearings and something. There was really nothing that was talked about in the documentary that I didn't have prior knowledge to. The only one that I guess, if you want to call it that, would be potentially the impact of the discredit or the smear campaigns that were talked about briefly, kind of towards the end of the documentary, the things that were, done for Lou Elizondo and for Dave Grush. There was one point where I can't remember. I think it might have been Jay Stratton was talking about. He saw a press release that the Pentagon was going to put out about Lou, saying that Lou never had any involvement with ATIP. And Jay said, I replied all on that email to say you're wrong. And he basically got the message back that they were just going to run with it anyway. So, I mean, I think that was a key piece of information, because in Lou Elizondo's book, Imminent, he talks about, that kind of disinformation, smear campaign that he had to undergo. And here's somebody who was still technically on the inside at the time when that was happening, who could maybe set the record straight on Lou's involvement with ATIP. So I thought that was a key piece of information that, for me, made it more plausible that, these things, that these kind of smear campaigns that were happening are 100% legit. But other than that, as far as like for the topic of disclosure or any case information that we didn't have before, there was nothing that I heard that I didn't already know.
And that's awesome. I'm glad you pointed that out, the Lou Elizondo piece and the whole smear campaign piece. And it just reminded me that Lou Elizondo was also one of the people they included in that Wi-Fi PSYOP episode, determining that he was likely also part of PSYOP. So to see this age of disclosure, and then to see exactly that part of it covered, the smear campaign, I really walked away feeling like Lou was sort of validated. And I'm not saying it because the first thing people are going to say, oh, Lou fanboy. Not at all. But the information that I think he provided in Susan Go or Goff, whatever you want to call her, and all these other, the Pentagon in general, who was attempting to just discredit him all along the way, he was able to have that validated here in this film, which I think was awesome for him, because it takes all that speculation, the conspiracy stuff away. And it takes it out of that gray area and kind of gives you like, look, this is exactly what happened. Here's the proof. Here's the person to back this up. Statements, Jay Stratton and the late Senator Harry Reid. So I thought that was validating for him. And I thought that was awesome. But Drew Banky, what was something that you saw where you walked away like, wow, okay, that it was great and very important that they put that in there?
Again, I didn't I side with Josh. I didn't have any wow moments, but I definitely, at the end of it, could see the weight that this could have on the whole, on everybody, on the collective, and the impact it's going to have. A lot of stuff come out that a lot of people probably never heard of. The biologics, like I said in the beginning, is a big thing that's going to raise people's eyebrows. It's never heard of that before. And the way it ended, I think it's perfect. I think with regardless of everything else, we can step forward and all agree upon that we're not alone in the universe. And that's the first thing that the question I think it's going to answer for a lot of people. It didn't have any wow moments for me, but it did have an immense amount of information all stacked into one doc. And that I think is going to have impact. Like I said, I think it's really going to have a positive impact.
Well, I'm glad. So I'm glad I wrote some things down, because I definitely have targeted some. I'm a silver lining guy, right? So I definitely wrote down some things, some entries of times where I felt like, man, that was very important. That was super awesome that was said. It'll just start with Jim Semivan making a statement saying UAPs are real. they are here and they're not human. And really being sort of, direct and confident in that statement, I think goes a long way when it comes to someone that's like, are these things really here? Like, are UFOs really out there? I think when you have someone making a statement like that, and then also Jay Stratton stating that I've seen with my eyes extraterrestrial craft and extraterrestrial beings, like making those statements, that is huge, especially for those just coming in, because it's not something you have to really think through. This is a statement, and this is said in confidence. So I think people can, it's easier for them to swallow that, and they kind of are able to walk away immediately with the realization, because a lot of that stuff happens early in the film, and so they kind of immediately are like, oh, okay, this is real, and now I'm locked in. So I don't know, did you remember that part of it, and how did you feel about that statement, Josh?
Yeah, I remember it. It's no different, in my opinion. It's no different from any other person who's said the same statement over the last 50 years. The only difference is that somehow Jay Stratton has more credibility than any of the people that came before him. And I don't know that is credibility that's been earned more so than anybody else who came from before him. So, many people have taken the stage at conferences and on podcasts and on their own YouTube channels and in books and everything else across the last 80 plus years and said the same words. So the fact that it was said by this person in this documentary is not a new thing. Or rather, it's a new thing that this person is saying it, but it's not a new thing that it's being said. So for me, it's a matter of, if I hear it from Jay Stratton and now I believe it, what would have changed your opinion or your mind having heard it for the last 80 years?
Once again, this isn't for us. This is for the people
I know.
who just now, like someone who just said, okay, I saw a news report that said UFOs are real. Well, okay, this documentary just came out, now I'm going to watch this. So it's for that person who isn't steeped in this. Like, we've heard it. Obviously, we've been to conferences. We've talked to other experiencers. So we know this. This documentary wasn't for us at all. It's for those people on the outside. And I think that statement for them is pretty awesome, because they don't have that perspective that, hey, they've been saying this for 80 years, and they don't have that perspective. So I think for them, it's pretty powerful.
Yes, you are right. And it is, and that's something I've talked about numerous times on other shows, is that this was never for us. But in that same breath, I'll say, then a $25 entry point to watch the documentary is far too steep for the audience it is intended for.
I agree. I agree. That's why I said I'm not trying. I've been pumping this thing up and I've been selling it. I've caught myself selling this, but I don't mean to do that. I say, hey, get 10 people together. You guys go $3 a piece on this, $3.25, how much it is, and you guys all watch it together. I'd rather it go down like that. And yes, it should probably be a lot cheaper. It is more expensive than most action-packed movies out there that come out, usually around $19.99 for a movie when it initially comes out. So $25 is a little steep. I agree with you on that. Drew Banky, when Lou Elizondo says a statement like this, no one has the right to keep fundamental truth from humanity. Like, that is for sure. Like, when we talk about it being put in a package, I think that also is an important statement. Like, what is that? How do you feel about that?
Absolutely. He talked about how this is psychological and philosophical and all those other logicals. And I love that they were talking about how this is, that they were looking at the fact that this may affect religion. There's 64 institutions that it was going to greatly affect it. They never really named all those institutions. You kind of guess which ones it's going to affect. But yeah, this gave me a different view. I have a different view on Lou after this Doc. I really feel I really feel he really come across as genuine. I'm going to say, he, you know, he didn't change my mind or anything like that on any issues, but he come across as very genuine and just caring of like, this is one of the most important moments. And I think he was one that, this is maybe not a direct quote, but this is maybe one of the most important moments in human history that we're going through right now, up to this point. So I really think he gets the weight of it. I really do. Just from like listening to the words he was saying, and you know, he wasn't showboating about the capabilities or anything, but he was basically saying that there is a deeper story to this. All these occurrences, crafts in the sky and encounters, there's a deeper story even to that. That's much more harder to believe.
I can see how you walk away from it feeling that way, you know, because he had the book Imminent that came out, and another thing in this community, you know, a lot of people out there expect people not to make any money off of the things that they have to produce, but things cost money, and so it's okay. But I agree with Josh that the price of admission for this is way too high. It should be more like $10, $9.99, something like that would have been more acceptable. But you know, hearing in the point I'm making about Imminent, and then the statement that you made about how hearing Lou say this stuff and kind of explain how this went. I listened to the audio book of Imminent, right? So I didn't actually read it. I listened to the audio book, which was done in his own voice. So when I heard that and listened to the book, I had that same feeling. I was like, this sounds really authentic. Everything he's saying, it doesn't sound like he's lying, right? Yeah. Until we could bring something to the table, I think that disproves what a lot of people out there say, and maybe they also walk away from this if they see it feeling how you feel, like, wow, okay, I thought this way about him initially, like he was grifting and maybe making these things up and not being genuine, but I walk away from this and I feel like, okay, seems and feels pretty authentic. What were your thoughts on Lou Elizondo, Josh? Have you felt that way about him? Like, what is your overall view of Lou Elizondo?
Yeah, I mean, I've always kind of trusted my gut feeling when it came to Lou, and my gut feeling was that he was genuine. Even, you know, even genuine in his mistakes that he's made, you know, the chandelier photo and stuff, and really even owning up to and taking responsibility for when those things happen. And so, you know, for me, it was just another, I would say maybe even a little more stripped away for how we you know got to receive Lou and his message in this doc. You know, with a lot of the second half of it really being him almost as like a narrator for the rest of the documentary. You know, seeing him in plain clothes, sitting in a chair, being animated when he was talking about various things. You could tell that he's really passionate about it. All of that comes through, and although it can be faked, you know, I've known some really good salespeople who've just been really good about, you know, they could sell a ketchup popsicle to a person in white gloves, you know, but he doesn't really come across that way. His body language seems to match up with the words that he's saying, the emotions he's expressing. Really, I feel like Lou is genuine, but I think that Lou is a lot like us in that he had his exposure in the ATIP program, and then since you know, kind of getting out of all that and changing his direction and becoming, whether or not you believe he's a whistleblower or not, becoming a voice, let's say, of truth. He has continued to have experiences, and so a lot like many people in the community, it's only through our own experiences that we truly become, you know, knowers of the truth. And him having these experiences that reiterate some of the information that he was made aware of when he was in the ATIP program, and then I'm sure people he's met after the fact, just again continues to, kind of grow him in this journey that he's on to understanding more about the phenomena and what it means to him.
And I agree with that. And also seeing him in the halls of the Pentagon with Chris Mellon, and while he's going through this, it kind of takes you there to the moment when all this transpired and took place. And, I know John Greenwald with the FOIA request, I know he was in the middle of a validating or verifying if Lou was actually with ATIP, because the Pentagon, the DOD was releasing these statements saying he had no duties here with this particular group, and he was not the director, and all those things they put out to really confuse everybody, which obviously was part of a disinformation campaign. But I was glad that the whole ATIP thing, and I would like to know if John Greenwald feels the same, if he walks away from it feeling like, yeah, the ATIP thing was put to bed. He definitely was a part of that. He definitely was a director of that. And so likely all the other things that he stated related to that are likely coming from a factual place. So I would like, maybe John Greenwald to do a video soon about that, but I would like to know that. But we're going to get ready to go into the first break here of the night. So we're talking about age of disclosure. We're giving reviews, thoughts, and impressions. And I really feel like this is something that people should see. I think it's that important, at least for those just coming into the UFO subject. So we'll be back with more talk on this right after the break, right here on Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show, with me, Mr. Rob G, Drew Banky, Josh Rutledge. We'll see you guys in a minute. All right, we are clear, crystal clear. Let me go ahead and jump in the chat. I need to get to say hi to anyone, not a single person yet.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's see here. So going back. Let's see. First three in, courtesy of Kitty Catty Whack. We have Mel WD40 lubing us up and coming in with the gold tonight. We got Race Fan coming in with that old silver medal. And then we have Road Flare. Wow. Okay. Coming in with that bronze. Appreciate it. His Kitty Catty Wax passing the gold medal to acknowledge another. Yeah, definitely. That's awesome of you, Kitty Catty Wax. Thank you guys also for coming on in early as well. Let's see. Who else do we have? Polly Rotterman out there saying, hey, Robbie G. Hey, Polly Rotterman. Thanks for coming on in. She has the right idea. Please be sure to hit the like and please subscribe and comment after the show, because the algorithm is tripping right now. We really need that interaction and engagement so we can go ahead and tickle the algorithm. As we go ahead and look at Bad Frankie B saying, good evening. Hey, Bad Frankie B. Thanks for coming on in. We appreciate you showing up to the show. Roger Murray. Okay. Happy U.S. Thanksgiving. Still in the hospital. I hope you get better. Healing energies going out to Roger Murray out there. And I appreciate you even coming in tonight. You didn't have to do that, Roger Murray. Thanks for showing up. We appreciate your support and we support you right back. Let's see. Who else do we have out there? Miss Catherine Jones and hello, Mr. Rob G and fans. We appreciate you, Miss Catherine Jones. Thanks for coming on in here tonight. Let's see. Who else do we have? Trying to get to everybody before the end of the break. Let's see. Miss Catherine, I see you. Mike Jones. Who? Mike Jones. Appreciate you coming on in. Also, Kitty Catty Whack getting things going with the super sticker. We appreciate the support of the show. Cosmic Joe. Hey there, Rob G. I acknowledge your value product greatly. Thank you very much, Cosmic Joe. This is just awesome. And you're always awesome like that. I acknowledge you right back. You know that. We acknowledge Cosmic Joe. Hashtag we acknowledge Cosmic Joe. Appreciate you coming on in. Let's see who else is out there. Undead Jed. Hey y'all. Hey Undead Jed. Thanks for showing up here. Let's see. We got Mothman sighting. Appreciate you coming on in, sir. Matt Goodka as well. Thanks for showing up to the show tonight. JSCO77. Thanks for coming on in. We appreciate you, sir. Let's see. Who else do we got out there? Who else is out there? Mystic Journey. That is Josh Rutledge. Appreciate you, sir, for interacting with the chat. Let's see. Luscious Jules, thank you so much for coming on in here tonight, Jules. We appreciate you. Super Crazy Movie Geek, you too. Oh, yeah, we want retribution. That's facts. That is facts. Thanks for coming on in. Kurt W75, hey, appreciate you. Hey, Robin, everybody. Thanks for coming on in, sir. Let's see, getting down the list. Hopefully we can get, if not, I think we got time. Let me see here. Okay. Sing-a-lilify, okay. Did I say that right? No way, I just finished watching it. And here we are. Good. So you're right on time. You are right on time. Let's definitely put your thoughts in the comments as well. Like, post them in caps. Because that's what we'll do. Put them in caps. If you watch Age of Disclosure, put your feelings or your thoughts in caps. Some of the things that pointed you stood out to you, and then we'll kind of read your statements, your comments a little later on in the show, or maybe even throughout the show. Let's see, who else do we have here? Carl Garrison, Stage of Disclosure, LOL. Okay. Hey. Some people are going to walk away feeling some kind of way. I get you. Pancho Zort. Hey, SOR and Rob G. Appreciate you showing on up. Let's see. Here. Moving down. Dead Fish Cheese Spread. Hey, Dead Fish Cheese Spread. Thanks for coming on in. Let me see. I got about a minute left here. Let's see if we can get through everybody. Real Alien Encounter. That's awesome name. Appreciate you coming on in. Mark Eddie, I see you out there, sir. Thanks for coming on in to the show tonight. Hillbilly Herb, same for you, buddy. Appreciate you. And I'll probably have to get to everybody else on the next break. Andrew, thanks for coming on in. Yeah. I think so. Okay. Shroom Cowboy, appreciate you. He's in for the second time here. Appreciate you coming on in. Got about 30 minutes here. Let's see. Paramore, appreciate you showing up, sir. Thanks for coming on in right on time, too. Got about 10 seconds left. FAP saying, if it's Lou, it ain't true. Okay. Yeah. I know some people feel that way. You're okay to feel that way. We're coming back right about now. All right, everybody. Welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. We're on the back half of the first hour talking the Age of Disclosure. Your thoughts, your impressions. We're giving our thoughts and impressions here tonight. We've all watched it. I had some notes that we'll be going through here. I think some highlights were had. We'll talk about that a lot more. If you missed any of the show, if you're coming in late, you can definitely rewind, hop in the archive, youtube.com/spacedoutradio as we get back into the show. So, yeah, we're going over particular things that I feel like stand out because, once again, just starting from the beginning, we all agree that this documentary is not necessarily for the community, right? We totally can indulge in it, but it's definitely for new individuals that just are coming around to the fact that UFOs are real. And it was, I think, packaged very nicely. I think it hit a lot of the good points, even, obscure points that you may not have thought to, a normal person may not have thought to put in here. Yes, the instances happen, but then also what was said in between those instances. And I think those were a lot of the key things. Like, for instance, Eric Davis making a statement of, I'm aware of at least 2 non-human species.
Uh-huh.
When he said that for me, even knowing, kind of that we've probably retrieved bodies, just to hear it coming from somebody that may have actually seen this, or had, as far as the documentary goes, it's supposed to be full of people with firsthand knowledge of the situation. So to say that should be for the new people coming in, like, wow, he saw an extraterrestrial. He saw at least 2, and they get to kind of walk away and not have to think twice about the fact that the government has retrieved bodies. That statement, for you. Drew, how did you feel about it initially? If you recall that.
I feel it's gonna bring people out that's maybe haven't had the courage to talk about it yet. You know, they've seen documentaries, they've seen, you know, podcasts and stuff like this. People talk about it, but I think this particular documentary, people that may have experiences, I think it's gonna trigger more people to come forward and be validated to share their story and less afraid to share their story, a little more acceptable. Because you got to understand there's a set of people that we've talked about this several times that needs, you know, that South Lawn president podium type of thing. And I think this got really close to it. And it even mentioned even further that there's speculation that this administration may be the one to actually do that.
Yeah, we'll go into that as well. We'll go into that in a moment here in a little bit. Josh, your thoughts? I'm aware of at least 2 non-human species to say that. So, okay, I've never seen an extraterrestrial. I've never had an interaction with one. I know that they're there because I've seen the ships that they come in. I don't, on the face of it, know that there's more than one species. And, you know, who knows how many species there are. So to have someone say with confidence that I'm aware of at least 2 non-human species, it plays into what a lot of people say out there. How did you feel about that statement?
Yeah, I mean, I also, you know, was really pleased that he was able to make that statement, that he felt confident enough to be able to do so. Like Drew said, you know, I think seeing the confidence of the people that are in this documentary, you know, we've talked about it before. They've got a lot to lose by making statements like this. You know, for a lot of these folks like Hal Puthoff and others, it's not just a loss of potential government, you know, work. It's a loss of respect from the scientific community as well. And so, you know, they've got a lot on the line. And so to be able to be confident enough to make these statements in this documentary, I think is huge. The other piece I want to say, and you know, I don't remember who was the first person in the documentary to make the statement, but I do remember, you know, Hal and others echoing the statement of the fact that no one in mainstream science will take this topic seriously is a huge drawback. And so I like that the documentary included quote unquote scientists going on the record to say that, you know, this stuff is legitimate, it is real. And I'm, you know, even if they didn't say these words, I'm stating my career on the fact that I've seen these things. Because I do feel like what we're missing, as opposed to the rest of the world, perhaps, is a scientific community who is willing to investigate the phenomenon.
I agree, and I'll speak to that actually because I know that was I recall definitely when that was said, and it was essentially just pointing out the fact that, you know, our scientists here are under this stigma, you know, or affected by the stigma, and there are scientists around the world that are not. So it's like, hey, if somebody's going to figure it out, you know, our scientists need to have that open mindset to at least be able to, you know, be open to the fact that we have retrieved this stuff, because they're going to have to be the ones to reverse engineer it. Another statement that was made, it was actually by Mike Gold, that kind of also plays into that, and the stigma piece, stating that the stigma has been a tremendous problem that is actually a national security threat in the United States. Other countries are not suffering from the stigma we are. So we are already, as Americans, at a disadvantage, right? And that rang so true. And I thought that statement was super impactful because it really puts it into perspective, and it shames, you know, it shames the way that that our government is handling this UFO situation versus a country over there that because the stigma doesn't exist, might be the first ones to come out and either, you know, harness the abilities of this alien tech, or be the first ones to disclose the alien visitation. So what did you think about Mike Gold's statement? And before you say it, he kind of shocked me, right? Because he was a part of that NASA Aero press conference where it didn't really seem like he was really on the side of all this, but then for some reason he was a part of that UFO hearing, and it seems like he's somehow part of the community. I'm still kind of worrisome and maybe a little apprehensive about that, but what did you think about that statement?
Yeah, I mean, I did watch that hearing where he made that statement and where he was present. I didn't understand his involvement in that particular hearing at the time. But I, after the documentary, I started thinking about it a little bit more, and maybe his involvement was simply to show dissent with his colleagues, because the NASA report on UAPs was, it might as well be in the 3I Atlas report. It was basically full of the same type of information. It seemed like in the UAP report, they spent more time talking about how the video labeled the go fast, that the object wasn't really moving that fast. Like, they got hung up on the fact that the name didn't match what was happening in the video, more so than the fact that they caught this object moving the way that it was, and it was corroborated with eyewitness testimony. So I feel like his involvement in the UAP hearing, and then of course referencing that in the documentary, again, I think it was his way to show, hey, not everybody at NASA feels the way that was presented at the as a part of our UAP press conference, if you will. I also think that I made this statement when I was on with Dave the other night on the other show, is that I feel like NASA as a whole has lost its imagination, and they've replaced it with hubris. And I feel like that Mike Gold coming forth and making the statements that he did, even if it seemed out of place in the hearing or even in the documentary, is just another way for him to say, hey, not everybody at NASA, is a stick in the mud when it comes to this topic. And some of us really want to see it investigated seriously, and we think there's something to it.
The problem with that is I don't see anyone, if they allowed him to come out and be a part of something like this, and was like, yes, go represent us within this conversation about the phenomena because we think it's important, you would think that NASA would have some talking points, especially when it came to 3I Atlas, at least being open to the fact that something coming from way out there could be not a comet, right?
I don't think that he was there to represent NASA. I think he was there to represent the dissenting voices at NASA.
Okay, I like that perspective. How about you, Drew Banky? Do you recall that statement? Stigma has been a tremendous problem that is actually a national security threat in the United States. Other countries are not suffering from the stigma we are, so we are already as Americans at a disadvantage. You being a veteran, sir, how did that statement make you feel?
I mean, I took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States, and a lot of that Constitution protects the people's rights. And for the statements to be coming out, we've talked about it before. It's been kind of known about that Hollywood and the general stigma that's been put around this has been orchestrated by the powers to keep from people. They had a clip of a presidential debate where they called on what's his name? It was a Democratic debate for president, and it was the UFO question come up, and everybody laughed. Mm-hmm. But I mean, how long is that? How long is that? And that was just back just a year or two ago. I think it was from 2004.
It was Christie.
Yeah, Chris Christie. That's right.
Yeah.
So that just goes to show you that this has been going on for a long time, and it's an attack against the people. It's I've said it many times before. The blood is on their hands, because I personally know people that has suffered from depression, and we've all heard the stories of people committing suicide from the ridicule that's that they've taken on after sharing their story. So really the blood is on these private organizations and these government programs that's been secret for so long, under the guise of protecting the people, when when realistically they're actually hurting the people and actually killing people from directly from what they're doing. So I said it before that they need to answer for that. There's a lot of mental illness and stuff out there that's caused from this 80 years, and it's to have it put out like that, that's isolated here in the United States and in the West, is just is a harder pill to swallow. So
And it explains a lot. And looking at that, we had there were a few Congress members that they interviewed: Gillibrand, Rubio, Luna. It, for me, most of the political individuals were framing the threat narrative, the adversarial threat narrative, which, okay, I'm okay with that, right? Because if you don't know what all of this stuff is, there may obviously be an element of adversarial tech involved here. So, I was okay with that, but did you feel like, was there anything that they said? I mean, did it add value for you? Anything that any of the representatives said? These are people that are on the UFO task force or committee, whatever the committee is called, for disclosure, transparency for disclosure. How did you feel about their involvement in the film, and could they have done more? Do you think there's some things maybe they could have also added that wasn't said during the documentary, Josh?
No, I mean, I think that their involvement was appropriate. I, from the stance of, like you said, it's geared or targeted towards people who are on the fringe of whether or not they want to believe this stuff is real. Seeing, elected officials go on the record, saying that it is real, and throwing their support behind a further understanding of the topic, I think goes a long way towards taking, you could say that the documentary is comprised of two groups, elected officials and bureaucrats. And there are some people who believe elected officials over bureaucrats, and there are some people who believe bureaucrats over elected officials. So the documentary contains both. So regardless of, how you might feel, you have a spokesperson, if you will, represented in the documentary. And so I think because of that, even for just what they said, even just their involvement in the documentary will speak volumes to the people who need that political backing for something to be real.
Yeah, those people who depend on these authority figures to give you the answers. So I agree with you there. And Drew, do you have an opinion on that? And I got a question.
For sure. I mean, that's one of the constructs of social engineering and all that. Like, you got to have an authority figure, and when a perceived authority figure, obviously if you're elected official, you're authority figure. So that checks one of the major check marks of bringing something to fruition, like when they speak about it. And to have them saying it, it's a big deal. It's going to be a big deal for a lot of people. And for the people that's already experienced it, like we said, it's not going to matter that much. But for those of us and to circle back to the price point, this is going to get a lot more traction when the prices start going down when it becomes free. The people that are scrolling through and then come across it and, oh, it's free, I'll watch it, and then they stumble upon something they may never heard of before. It's going to be really mind-blowing for them. And when it's something that they recognize from CNN and C-SPAN and everything else, it's got a whole lot of authority.
Yeah, if I could add on also,
Yeah.
Rob, I just want to say, everybody who's in the community, who I think about the community as being, a range or what's the word? The spectrum of people who are in the know. The three of us on this call, we're probably at the higher end of the spectrum because of the type of work that we do, right? Where we're making a show and we're putting out things on YouTube channels and such. But there are people who are even in the community who are still maybe lower on, they have a loose interest in it, or only an interest in it as it relates to their experience. So I would say that anybody who's at the upper tiers of the community, you should be looking, in my opinion, you should be looking at places in your locality, libraries, high school gyms, whatever, that you could get over the next couple of months to say, hey, can I host an event where I screen Age of Disclosure for anybody who's willing to come out and take a look at it? And I have seen on social media, on X and places, where people have gotten approval from Dan Farah to do just that. So I think, that's if the whole goal is to get this into the eyes and ears to as many people as possible, in my opinion, that's the way to do it.
True fact, and glad you pointed that out, because you want this in everyone's hands. You want all eyes around the globe, and there are people in financial situations that just can't do this, but that doesn't mean they should not be able to get the message. So Dan Farah, if you're out there, I don't know if you watch the show, if you happen to come across this review because you're curious, let's subsidize this one, or at least give permission for, as Josh said, events to be held where people can get together and watch it, because really that's the important thing. I know you got to pay for your costs and all that, but which I do respect that, because it definitely costs to make things. But great idea there, Josh. And I wanted to ask you guys this, as we were just talking about the whole Congress elected official input into this film. How did you feel specifically about Marco Rubio? Did you feel, now we have Marco Rubio post current administration and being in the position he is, Secretary of State, whatever he's currently doing now, and then we have Marco Rubio prior to that, where he's part of this, in Congress and part of this UFO effort. Did you sense a difference in the current Marco Rubio versus the one that has spoken on UFOs prior? What was your thought on that? And did you take anything away from that? Am I looking too far into that?
I would say, I don't know that we're really dealing in the documentary. I don't know that we're really dealing with new Marco Rubio, because we don't know when that interview was filmed. Right? We know that the documentary was screened in March of this year. So likely they wrapped filming sometime in 2024, right?
Probably prior.
So he could have been interviewed in 2023.
Okay.
It's been
look at that again. I have to.
I know they spoke about it. It's been 4 years in the making. So
yeah.
It just, and I may be, I'm going to have to check that, because it is right on that line, but I may be looking too far into that. But it just seemed like, the reason why I'm saying that is because it just seemed like when they asked him about it, it was just more of a, hey, this could be adversarial sort of situation, where he wasn't really, going into the UFOs as he, normally would during a congressional hearing, or he wasn't taking that angle. It just felt for me like he was holding back and, maybe indicating that it was done while he was part of this current administration, but maybe not. So we'll look into that. One thing I thought also that was kind of cool was the information Hal Puthoff came out with, where he talked about briefing George W. Bush, where he talked about not actually briefing George W. Bush, but he was briefed the Secretary, the Treasurer, I believe, the Secretary of Treasury, and, positioned it to him like, should we be taking this to the president? And the Secretary of Treasury essentially said that, no, this is Steve Mnuchin. I'm sorry. Let me go back. So this was Jay Stratton says he briefed Trump's former Secretary of Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, during, I guess, Trump's first term, and was asked what the economic impact of the president going to the microphone. This is what Mnuchin asked him. What would be the economic impact of the president going to the microphone, as he would have to consider the impact in case the president made that move? So it was, for me, just like, okay, we were in a moment where it was literally on the table and discussed that the president potentially might be making this announcement. And this was obviously first term, so between 2016 and 2020. So how did you guys feel about that? But I guess we'll give a quick answer before we actually go to break. We got like 30 seconds.
My quick answer is that, and I mean this not in a political statement, but Trump is very unpredictable as to what he's going to say at the microphone. And I think that, it's prudent for his people to be prepared, since this was in the news cycle when Trump was in office. Be prepared for what if he does go to the microphone and say aliens are real? What's the fallout of that happening?
We're going to pick back up on that. We'll get Drew Banky's answer right after the break, as we are out of time here as we go into the top of the hour right here on Spaced Out Radio, After Hours Radio Show. We'll be back talking to Asia Disclosure, thoughts and impressions. We love to hear yours. Hour 2 is coming up.
Conversations that move the needle.
Conversations that move the needle.
You're listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio.
You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right, we are clear. See you guys in 5. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. We are in after hour number 2, as we have about 5 seconds, actually 30 seconds to go here. Going to bring our guest back on the stage, and then also I am going to bring in, let me see here how this can work. Let me do this like this. Okay, it's not the right view here. I think it's this one. All right. Okay, there's those guys. And also this guy.
What?
David Scott. We're coming back right now. Hold on. All right, everybody. Welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. We are in after hour number 2. We've been sitting here talking about Age of Disclosure, giving our review because I felt like it was cool. A lot of definitely good points there for people who are just coming into the community. Make sure if you miss any of the conversation we're having here tonight, you hop in the archive because it doesn't cost you a dime to do it. YouTube.com/Spaced Out Radio. As we jump back into the conversation, and right before the break, we were talking about how Trump, Jay Stratton says that Trump's former Secretary of Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, was asked, quote, what was the economic impact of the president going to the microphone, as he would have to consider the impact in case the president made that move. So meaning that it was literally in that moment that close to being considered to be taken right adjacent to President Trump first term to go ahead and maybe come out and be that disclosure president, which everybody thinks he might be. I don't know. How did you feel about that statement when you saw that in the film, Drew Banky?
Well, it's not that surprising because we know that Bush had the same thing. I think it was back in 2007. He had a meeting and weighed all the pros and cons of it too. So I think as we go through and more of this story unfolds, especially after this documentary gains more traction in the media, that we're going to find out that this meeting has been had by a lot of presidents leading up to this. So I think it's just the newest administration. But like I said, we know that Bush had the same thing, pretty much the same type of thing, conversation in his inner cabinet. So
yeah. Dave Scott, your thoughts on the Age of Disclosure? And I know you may not have had a chance to see it, but I know you maybe seen reviews and had conversations about it. Did you have any perspective on what we just talked about there? The thought that this was literally almost brought to Trump in between 2016 and 2020, yes, and maybe we would have had disclosure at that point.
You know, if you go back to right before Donald Trump left the White House in 2019, 2020, he did an interview with his son, Donald Trump Jr., and the final questions that were asked were about Roswell and UFOs. And this is a subject that Donald Trump Jr., love him or hate him, he loves talking about this subject. He absolutely does. And the fact that he asked that, and Trump sheepishly basically said that he knew a little bit but wasn't paying attention. It's not his thing. It's not his style, whatever it may be. And he kind of blew off the question. You know, he's not like George Bush Jr., who basically said on, I think it was Jimmy Kimmel, that he would never, ever say a thing. Even if he was allowed to, he would never, ever say a thing. I think that the president of the United States has a real conundrum with this subject because he's not allowed to say anything. I think there are certain topics he is not allowed to talk about. A couple of the topics, in talking to Grant Cameron, who's very familiar with this subject, you know, presidents cannot talk about certain things. Example, 9/11. Can't talk about 9/11 being a conspiracy. Can't talk about UFOs. Can't talk about if there's been contact been made. And certainly many other projects and things that we don't even know about. But I do believe there is a list of do's and don'ts. But, you know, Rob, you and I, we've talked about it on my show quite a bit about the economic impact. I remember asking Lou Elizondo, coming out of COVID, did you guys use COVID as a litmus test about how people treated people in light of some sort of worldwide pandemic. Okay, I don't care. This isn't about the COVID topic, whether you're jab free or you're a jabaholic. I don't care. Okay, this is about the subject at hand. Elizondo told me point blank, he goes, yes, we did, and we didn't like seeing the way people were treating each other. People who were ratting out neighbors for having mom and dad over for Christmas. People who were calling in people who were driving without a face mask on, or whatever the subject may be. It got ugly. Now, if you throw in a catastrophic event like catastrophic disclosure or something along those lines, there is real concern that the world is going to go into a panic, and poor Josh Rutledge isn't going to be able to get his 3-ply toilet paper, okay? And Drew Banky's not going to be able to get milk, and Rob G isn't going to be able to get his meats from the grocery store. I'm not going to be able to get medicine. These are real problems. So when you talk about disclosure, there is much more. And in what I know of these gentlemen who have spoken, okay, and I might not be a fan of all of them. I might be a fan of them saying the same thing that we in the UFO world have heard for years. But the one thing that they have in common is they are talking about disclosure. Just isn't about saying, hey, there's UFOs here, or we found UFOs, or life out there. It is larger than that. It's the economic impact, the human impact. Okay. Elizondo, we talked about religion. We talked about food. We talked about politics. We talked about Wall Street. It's going to affect everything in ways that the only thing that could trump that would be some sort of extreme nuclear holocaust, or Jesus Christ himself coming back from the heavens and the apocalypse begins. That's how serious this topic is, that they don't want to get into. Sorry for rambling, but that was my point.
Great ramble. No, and I agree. Here's the thing, and I was going to say this, and I'm still going to say this. So, when we talk about potentially being disclosure president and why he didn't probably do that in that moment, I don't know if it was even relayed to him. He didn't really say how that conversation turned out, but I guess maybe the economic piece is the reason why it wasn't brought to him to step to the mic. But then, now we're looking at this point, we're looking at it in this current term where obviously we know the disclosure, as you said, shakes everything up, ontological shock, markets may crash, but most importantly, the powers that be, these people in power, and the people controlling the narrative, lose that power, lose that authority. And we know we're dealing currently with an authoritarian. And any authoritarian, the main thing they don't want to lose is power. So with that being said, you could probably say he won't be the disclosure president because there's no way that authoritarian just wants to give up that immediately. So that's definitely, I don't think, something that's going to happen. But moving kind of into this other thing, because I don't want to make it political, but it's just the truth. It's just the facts. We had Hal Puthoff, who made this statement, which I thought was pretty huge. He says, whoever it is, they're here. They're operating here, and they have been here for a very long time. I felt like that was a super impactful statement. And once again, we've been saying this all show. I think it was delivered with confidence, with no nonsense. And then when you hear something like that, I think it for people, again, this is for the people that are just coming into the conversation, but for them, instead of just hearing that kind of on a Dave Grush sound clip from News Nation, or hearing somebody kind of briefly discuss that, to hear it in this documentary and delivered in that fashion, I think it hits home for, and makes them approach this as, yeah, they're taking this at face value. And I feel like, that was Dan Farah, applaud him for that, for making sure that it came across that way. How did you feel about that statement, Drew Banky? Did you see that part of the documentary? What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll pass on this one. Let me get a minute to formulate.
Yeah, Drew Bank or Josh Rutledge.
Yeah, I did see that. Again, it's something that's been echoed throughout the community for a long time. If again, looking at it through the lens of the documentary is geared for those that are uninitiated or recently initiated, let's say, then having that statement included, I think, supports kind of the overall or the underlying message. If you were to sum up the documentary into kind of one underlying message, which is this stuff is real and we should treat it that way. I think that it was important to include, especially coming from some of the people that at that point in the documentary, they've already established who these folks are, their credibility, why their words mean something. I'm a little, I guess, like I said, a little frustrated that somehow their words mean more than people's words who have been saying it for a longer period of time, but whatever. Uh, but yeah, I think that it was important to include I think the hard part for me is, and I think this is where a lot of skeptics, if they haven't already started picking it apart, is that those are some pretty bold claims to make in a very targeted documentary without really providing anything whatsoever to back them up.
He did add that there was a possibility that, with that being that they've always been here, that there's a possibility that these could be part of some breakaway civilization. Now, yes, I did feel like it was kind of a step far. Maybe he could have left that part out. And I always feel like that, instead of coming from a top down where you're talking about all this stuff that isn't proven yet and working your way down, you start with the things that we can definitely take to the bank and then go out from there. So I think he may have stepped out a little too far from that. But when you hear a statement like that, when in context, Dave, they've always been here. They may be a breakaway civilization. For me, as someone in the community, that part of it was like, wow, okay, breakaway civilization. They did just disappear off the face of the map. We have a lot of different examples of times where ancient humans made it to some point and then kind of disappeared. And then the theory with him saying that, the theory is that maybe it could be something like that, where one of these civilizations went underground and here we are. Do you think that was a step too far to include in this documentary, Dave? And then what is your opinion on a statement like that?
Well, I think there's a big question. If you look at Dr. Michael Masters, who wasn't a part of this, he has been saying that he believes that these aliens we're seeing are the future us. They're time travelers, right? Or they're coming from a different dimension. He doesn't really believe that they're coming from space. And I think that's the biggest mystery of it all, because we've always believed, since the UFO subject became popular in 1947, we've always believed that they come from outer space. We never thought about, being future humans from time traveling organizations, or we've never thought of them for being in inner Earth or different dimensions. We've always thought about them as being extraterrestrial. Mm-hmm. And I think that throws a real caveat in what a lot of people are looking at when they get this subject. It's very tough to comprehend regarding that. So Hal Puthoff, though, I mean, if you look at his track record, I mean, this guy's put up a lot of woo in the years, man, about where things are coming from, where they are, what they are. You look at Tom DeLonge from Blink-182. He was very much, carved out his niche because of Hal Puthoff and author Peter Levenda in regards to aliens being a threat. We got to put nukes in space to blow them out of the sky, and very negative aspect of it all. I think Puthoff knows a lot more than what he lets out. He's 85 years old, and he's going to take these secrets to the grave, much like most of them will. And I think that's a shame, because it shouldn't actually be that way. Spill the beans. If you're on your deathbed, somebody like Hal Puthoff, who's been doing this for almost 50 years or more, spill the beans. If you're going to, and I think the frustration that a lot of people have with people like Hal Puthoff put in these subjects is a lot of people feel he's played this community for a long time. And I see everybody nodding like you guys agree. I mean, he has been the guy, he's been Lucy with the football with Charlie Brown. He's holding the football. That's probably the best example I could give, if you guys agree.
I do. I agree with that. How about you, Drew Baker? You got input on Dave's statement there, or even what we're talking about here?
Yeah, well, him coming from a point of authority, like we talked about before, and making those statements that we're not alone, they've been here all along, but then going off into theory, I think it's kind of reckless. Because a lot of people are assuming in the background that this is coming from some type of experience or some type of fact. If it is coming from some type of experience or fact or knowledge, then he needs to speak on it, but I think, looking from what I know of Native American spiritual practices and their connection to star beings, and this is not I totally believe this their future us. I think that's the truth, and I think that's the hard part that people are gonna have to come to reconcile over the next couple of years as this unfolds. I think one of the most impactful statements, thinking about it, going, replaying it in my mind, is when Elizondo talked about there's a lot more I wish I could talk about, but it's classified. So if we're at this point and all this stuff is unclassified, what is on the other side? It's what is on the other side of that classification veil. So that opens up a lot of questions and theories. You can theorize on that. So this statement by Hal Puthoff, it's going into opening out people's theories. When the documentary did a very good job of putting forth facts that people making statements. I seen these firsthand. It wasn't anything that I read about or a file that I read about. Is something that I seen firsthand. And then them talking about the USO, starting to get into the USOs. I think that's going to be an eye opener for a lot of people that has only dipped their toe into this.
That's a true statement. And being that you brought up the Lou Elizondo piece where he was like, I wish I could tell you more, but I can only tell you what I'm approved to tell you. And yeah, okay, I'm with that. And I understand that. And that's where NDAs come into play. You know how I feel about NDAs. If the world is on the line and humanity needs to shift, then we need to figure out a way to kind of dance around that and find some legal loophole, or we need to be looking into that. But they did bring up, and this is a big problem, I think, with disclosure in general. And I think we obviously knew this, but to kind of put it out there that not only are people signing NDAs, but they're actually being forced to sign NDAs in a lot of cases where NDAs weren't even part of the conversation, but because they were exposed to something, they made them sign the NDA. And then terms of the NDA could vary by punishable by unaliving potentially, or just jail time or whatever the normal thing is, penalty for breaking the NDA. So when you see that the NDAs are not just being agreed to be signed by individuals who are being let into certain programs, but they're actually forcing people to do it. How did that make you feel when you heard that? And I guess we'll start with Dave on that. What is your opinion on that, Dave? I know you haven't seen it yet.
I think it's correct, the correct thing to do. There are certain things out there that you don't say. Okay. And it drives me crazy, drives you crazy, drives all of us crazy because we're passionate about this subject. But it's the same thing. You're a Dallas Cowboys fan. A lot of times when you enter playoffs, and I'm sorry for that because, Dak Prescott would really look good on the sidelines, right?
Sorry,
had to.
It's okay. It's okay.
Okay. But a lot of times, if you're a fan of sports, you hear them say when a player gets injured, oh, it's an upper body injury. Oh, it's a lower body injury. Why can't you just tell me the guy fractured his ankle or separated his shoulder? What is that going to do? The other team already knows. Okay. You're not hiding it from next week's competition. They already know. Okay. Hockey is horrible for that. Okay. And as when I was a sports journalist, it drove me nuts because you literally see a guy on crutches and they're saying, yeah, he's got an upper body injury. He's day to day. In the meantime, you see an air cast on his ankle. Like, that's the kind of thing that they're doing in the UFO world. It frustrates us, but they have to do it because in order to fool the public, you have to be able to play the game. And there are a lot of things they don't want us to know, whoever they are, whether it's any of the military branches, whether it's the CIA, the NRO, the NSA, whatever alphabet agency, they have protocol that they need to do. They have people who need to have top secret clearance, and those people need to be trusted. We as the public don't have to like it, but we have to play by it. If I could just use a journalism example here, people in this field get really upset when you hear a journalist like myself or Ross Coulthart or whoever say, my sources are indicating to me. Well, who's your source? Well, if I give you my source, my source may get in a lot of trouble, and I'm not going to break that chain of information. I'm not giving you my source. You have to trust me.
See, it's
that's the same way.
Where it affects me. Like, I understand now. If you agree to sign an NDA, if you're in this back room and you're being told a secret and you're willing to participate in that, and there's going to be an NDA that goes along with that. Okay, I understand that, and I understand people are going to do that, and they're going to abide by the rules because they agreed to do so. But it's the situations where they're being exposed to an incident that maybe they didn't want to be exposed to. And because they were exposed to it, they're being like strong-armed into signing an NDA. Like, hey, because they have a choice at that point. It says, I'm not going to sign the NDA, but they're obviously being like strong-armed into saying, no, put your name on the dotted line. You're going to sign this NDA, and we're going to make sure that you don't say anything about that. That goes into the whole thing that, like, what David Gress talks about with the whole fear tactics and all these different things that they do behind the scenes. But when you hear that statement, Josh, because I know you guys have both seen the documentary, starting with Josh, what did you feel about the whole being forced to sign NDA? You had a few different people who kind of echoed that.
Yeah. So a couple thoughts. I'll use Dave's analogy that he gave around the football or sports injury. I'll take it a step further, and I'll say that, I think that the general idea is that when you hear they say, upper body injury, right, as opposed to the specific part of the body that's injured, there's an idea or concept of providing some level of privacy to the individual who has a sports injury. And then if you extrapolate that out and say, well, then the same might be true of other information in other areas of importance, where you want to be able to say, yes, we've videoed an object that we don't understand, but you don't want to be able to say, or you can't say the specifics of how you came across or came by that information, because in giving the specifics, you also tell, private information that is not meant for public consumption, such as the technology that was used, the sensors that were used, whatever the case may be. I do think that there is a way to scrub citing information, citing media, whatever that media might be, that removes any possibility of an indication to our foreign adversaries of what type of technology that was used, what the sensors were, et cetera, et cetera. But in the cases of protecting that information, it's essential that people not disclose that detail.
All right, that is awesome place to end it. And yeah, I have my thoughts on it. We'll go ahead and talk about that right after the break. We're going into the middle of hour 2 right here, Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show, and me, your host, Mr. Rob G, being joined tonight by a wonderful panel, Drew Banky, Josh Rutledge, and of course, Dave Scott up there in the right corner. We'll be right back after the break. See you guys in a minute. Roitsky, crystal clear. Alexi LXC, thank you for coming on in saying I agree, Dave. That's why I think they share wrong info. Awesome stuff. Okay. Sajika 3. Great show. But Candyland is calling. Oh my God. Awesome game. Awesome game. I don't blame you. Blue Cruise, thanks for coming on in. Brad Lomas, thanks for showing on up. And I did tag some of the statements you made. Once again, guys, we want your input too. So make sure you're putting your thoughts about if you've seen the documentary or even your thoughts on the conversation we're having. Put them in all caps in the chat. So we will be bringing those up throughout the show because we want to hear what you felt about the age of disclosure. Let's see who else has come on in. Who else snuck in through the back door? Smokes a lot, stuck right on in through the back door. Thank you for coming on in. Mark Roy, we appreciate you showing on up here tonight to the After Hours Radio Show. Carol Amerio as well. Thank you for coming on in. Awesome stuff. Who else is showing on up? Who else is tardy tonight? Tardy to the party, right? Who else is tardy to the party? Jeremy Jones, appreciate you coming on in. You don't want to drop the soap and say, okay, wait, I ain't supposed to be reading that. Let me go ahead and move on. Let's see who else is showing up here tonight. You guys are wild out there, man. You guys are wild. That's all I'm gonna say. Let's see. Miss Captain Jones earlier was saying, say it again, Dave. Say it again. Let's see. There you go. Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff, Dave. Awesome stuff, man. Let's see. I think that's it. Yeah, I think we're good. Oh, Aaron Jones. Yeah. And they like, okay. Awesome. I'd like to hear this. Aaron Jones says, my wife and her friend watched it with me. They know nothing, and they liked how I put off at Eric Davis the most. They see, I mean, because they're a duo, right? They're like a dynamic duo. They're inseparable. So maybe it's like this. It's almost like Step Brothers. If you remember the movie Step Brothers, it kind of reminds me of that.
They're like Laverne and Shirley.
Yeah, there you go. That's another good one. Laverne and Shirley. I like that.
I don't know how dynamic they still are, though. They might be the decrepit duo now.
Yeah, see, Laverne and Shirley is then showing your age, Dave. There's just a lot of the younger ones don't even remember Laverne and Shirley. It was in syndication when I was growing up, so I only remember live episodes of Laverne and Shirley.
Well, imagine Josh Rutledge being Laverne and Drew Banky being Shirley. There you go.
Tomato, Hossa peppered barbecue sauce.
Whatever it is there. Exactly. FAP said
we're just gonna make it if we
about
try.
20 minutes ago. He says, Dave clogged up all the free flowing lines. Food and goods shut down. Thanks, Dave.
No problem.
115 in the chat and 70 likes. We need to
we
balance
gotta get
that
them
out,
up.
guys. We balance that out.
If we could, because we have an algorithm issue here, and we're just asking you guys, please take a moment to hit the like button. Putting on a nice show for you, absolutely free. The archives are always free as well. All we're asking for is a like in return. It's just pressing a little button. Just tap it one time.
Boom.
Make sure it highlights. Leave a comment as well. Just talk about how you like the show or you didn't like the show. Let us know either way, because the comment juggles the algorithm too. And we're just trying to make sure that we get heard out here. So we'd appreciate your interaction there, as we have about a minute left. So you have time to go ahead and do so. We definitely appreciate it. Whether you're watching now or on Team Replay. Flubber Lane. Full panel, yay. Appreciate you coming on in, Flubber Lane. Let's see. Yep, Undead Jed, I see you out there. So we got everybody. I think we're current. We have about a minute and a half left here. All right, I got you, Brad Lomas. Kate's maintain K live. Just tape it one time. That's what she said. Okay, that's what's over my head. I don't know what that is. Please elaborate, or maybe not, depending on what you mean by that. 30 seconds left here. AAO Amy, appreciate you coming on in. Lil Mikey, LOL, appreciate you coming on in. Flat Sixer is in the building. Appreciate you coming on in. Hey, good to see everybody with the wavy hand emoji. Appreciate you showing on up here to the show tonight. Got about 15 seconds left. All right, about 10 seconds here. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, After Hours Radio Show. We're on the back half of the second hour, hour number 2, as we have a full panel here, and we're talking about the age of disclosure. We're doing a review show, documentary by Dan Farah. Definitely think it was a good one. It's a good watch. You should definitely go and do that. We had off conversations so far as well. If you missed any of it, just hop in the archives, free, youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio, as we jump right back into the show. So we had a few other statements here. There was actually one thing I wanted to cover here, which was the visuals that they showed during the documentary of UFOs over the missile silos, and they made sure to point that out and make that a part of this presentation. Did you see that piece, Drew Banke, and what were your thoughts about that? Did that make you feel any kind of way when they presented that?
Well, I've already known about that, but they talked about how the legacy program, one of the parts of the legacy program was the Department of Energy. So anything that involves any nuclear or anything like that, like would trigger the legacy program to come into play. So it's we know that we've had an uptick in contact since Hiroshima and the first atomic bomb started dropping. And, I think the theory that triggered a attention from off-planet, interdimensional, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to call it, or whatever it is that we're dealing with. I think it's a big tell for people. Me personally, it was already known about, so it wasn't that surprising, but I'm glad that they added that in there. And them talking about the whole interdimensional thing and getting into that fact, when I first started talking about this 5-6 years ago, the consciousness and interdimensional talk about it really wasn't being digested very well or taken. I didn't get a lot of bookings at first because that's where my conversation always went. I had experiences, but my conversation was always go to, the consciousness or something like that. So I think it's it's an unfolding thing. And I think, having the connections to, and the fact that they were actually controlling the silos, is a big thing that a lot of people that haven't heard of, like we've been echoing, like a lot of people that haven't heard about it is going to be a big eye opener for them.
How about you, Josh? UFOs and just the visuals, right? They were talking about this thing. They showed this huge globe directly in it, because we always hear about them being over the silos, but I think the visual kind of gave you, it even gave me more of a perspective on what the individual actually saw in the moment. And we're talking about these things that were as big as one guy said, not a Walmart, but big as a super Walmart. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about 5 feet directly above the hatch of the missile silo. So obviously they're checking a box, which I thought was actually pretty cool. But did you have any perspective on that part of the documentary, Josh?
Yeah, I know. I thought it was a good place to put a visual. It's one of the things, though, that I actually thought they could have done more of. There was a lot of descriptor, language throughout the documentary of various, sightings and experiences and things, and it seems like they really phoned it in on like they could afford 2 drawings, and those were the 2 that made it into the documentary. So I think that as a in my professional career, one of the things I participate in quite often is corporate training. And one of the things that I've learned is that people learn a combination of three different ways: kinesthetic, that means hands-on, visual, and auditory. Well, obviously you can't do kinesthetic necessarily within a documentary. So you want to try to, though, intermix as much as you can between auditory and visual in a documentary. Having someone just interviewed in a chair in a room with a bunch of books is not enough of a visual, in my opinion. And that's something that this documentary severely lacks, is that additional visual concept. And so, I like the visual that they included. For the most part, it was accurate to the description, because I've watched a lot of the documentaries where it's not. So I thought they did a good job there. But I think if they would include it, or they should have included a lot more, kind of visual recreation representation of what was being talked about, it would have been much more successful in potentially conveying what it is that the person is talking about.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because it really kind of, now to think about it, kind of sticks out that maybe that those were like the only visuals kind of that they gave, aside from the
gimbal.
Yeah, and the obvious videos that we've seen before. So yeah, that makes total sense. But just there's no, from what I get from the visual that I did see, it's just like, hey, it's no mistaking. They're talking about this thing was literally almost touching the top of this missile silo. It's not like it was not here for the nuclear missile. It was definitely focused on this particular missile right here, telling you, hey, I know it's down there, and you kind of get that interpretation without any words being said. So awesome work. And then when I think about why, okay, you didn't probably put other visuals in there, and I think maybe because that's the way they do a lot of these UFO documentaries, where they're always putting these, and maybe that was too much taking away from the actual information. I think maybe is kind of his angle on that, but that's why he had all the books and that scenery behind him. But that's just my opinion. Maybe that's not even the case. But since we're talking about this, Dave, the whole importance of the UFOs over these missile silos, did you have an opinion on that? I know you didn't see the visual yet, but I guarantee you'll have an opinion on it.
I really don't want to balk on this question right now, but I want to see that. I want to see that before I do. I will. What I know of the situation, though, I would like to make a comment, and that would be, we don't know what they were doing with that missile silo. We don't know if they were playing a game. We don't know if they were trying to launch it. We don't know if they were, to them, it's a game. To us, it's absolutely a fearful situation when our most powerful weapons are having the light switch turned on and off and on and off. And I can see where that would be scary, but we don't know if it's a threat. We don't know if it was an end result or if they were toying with us or whatever. So I always fear and harken back that in this field, try not to jump to conclusions, because we don't know the answer. It's like we don't know the answer of alien abduction. Why do they do it? Why do they anal probe? Why do they stick needles in our eyes? To us, it sucks, but we do the same thing to dogs and pigs, trying to figure out what makeup to put works or won't hurt a human being, right?
I'm with you on that, because when you listen to the speculation on that part of it, you hear people say they were doing it to let you know they have control, or they were doing it for this other reason. It's like, okay, well, it can't be both, but I do understand. But walking away from that, maybe it could have been something simple as the electromagnetic field of since it's sitting right on top of the hatch, that maybe that's kind of what affected it. So there's just so many ways that can go. So I understand that there, but definitely, Dave, when you see it, the visual is awesome. And I think it actually adds to what the story that we know about these UFOs over nuclear sites. Now, another piece I did want to get into, because this is the part where I've talked about this before, where the FAA obviously is a government agency. We can go back to Chicago O'Hare, where that old debacle, where it's sitting in broad daylight right over the tarmac. Everybody's seeing it, taking pictures. FAA is totally silent on it, saying no, nobody came and said anything. So in that moment, we knew the FAA was also going to be complicit in covering up the UFO subject. So hearing from this guy, Brett Feddersen, who is the former director of the FAA, he made a statement saying we're absolutely not alone on Earth. But then Jay Stratton kind of chimed in as well and stated he was mentioning we actually currently have a safety of flight concern. The FAA is not tracking UAPs, and so that the FAA is at this point putting lives at risk every day. And I say that all the time because we know historically, there have been cases of actual military jets that have had their electronics shut off from these things. We know private pilots have also reported the same thing. So my thought has always been that if it happened in those cases, and Fred Valentic is a example of that, it definitely happens to commercial planes, right? So if that's the case, and this can happen up there because it's been proven to have happened in the past, then if the FAA is being complicit, just like with the New Jersey drones, then you're kind of definitely, part of the problem. So it was cool to have somebody from the FAA be able to go on record saying something like, hey, I can confirm, being from the FAA, we are absolutely not alone here on Earth. And I thought that was pretty powerful to get a statement like that from the FAA. What do you think about that, Drew? How do you feel about the statement made there?
Well, it takes me back to, I was at a conference probably 4 or 5 years ago. I can't even remember where it was, but I was in with the hotel I was staying at. There was a couple pilots that stepped into, like commercial airline pilots that stepped into the elevator as I was going up to my room. And on the ride up, I just asked them, because I was there for a UFO conference. I was like, "Hey, you guys ever see anything up there?" And they're like, "No, that stuff's not real, or we haven't seen anything like that." And these are older gentlemen, so you could tell like they've been flying for a while. And it's this, the secrecy behind all this. Like, I know that. I mean, if you're up there in the sky, you're gonna have to see something eventually. And so I would have to think that it's kind of, either policy that this is not talked about, it's just is part of flight school, or part of getting hired on a Delta, you sign an NDA or something like that where you can't talk about it. So it was nice to see that all the agencies are coming together and saying, yeah, these things happen. But to touch on the last question, just to add on, I watched the interview with Dan Farah that he did on Rogan, and he stated that when this went into the final cut, and we're not talking about all the footage, we're just talking about the final cut. There was over 4 hours of footage, and it cut it down to make it digestible and put it out as a doc. So there's a lot of other footage out there that was part of the doc that didn't make the final cut. And that goes into question, like, what I want to see a director's cut of that, that would be very interesting to see what didn't make it.
I could agree. So hopefully there's going to be a what do you call that? Director's cut, which is probably what it's setting up for. It's going to be a director's cut down the line with these additional scenes. One of the things that I looked at and wanted to know, since you brought that up, was in the preview before this came out, we saw the statement by Jay Stratton saying, I've put eyes on, I've seen extraterrestrial craft and extraterrestrial beings. And I was like, okay, is that really the statement that he's making, or is this edited in some way where when we watch the documentary, he's going to say something prior that says, oh, there was a time when I talked to someone, and but it was framed as it showed on the trailer where it was literally him. That's the statement that he made. So I thought that was pretty awesome. I thought it was a lot of that. And then this being wrapped around the fact that these are first party witnesses, I think is just so powerful with all those statements being made. But for you, Dave, with the FAA, obviously secret keepers and part of this whole, I don't even know what you want to call this whole thing. What is your opinion on having someone from the FAA step out and say, hey, we definitely aren't alone. I'm going to confirm that for you. and when we know that they've been historically part of this cover-up? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think it's great for him to come out, but just like every other so-called whistleblower out there, and I don't believe in whistleblowers. We have these people coming out making claims. When you work in that type of position, you do have to bring the evidence with you. Okay, like could you not get a paper document trail or a program or something along those lines? I mean, that's if we're going on the hardcore journalism aspect and keeping away from the woo story time, that's kind of what we're looking at here. Is it great to add his name to the list of credibility? 100%. We need more people like that coming on out. It gives some truth to the claim. But if you're going to magnetize the effort that you are doing and put yourself in this community as an expert, as someone who worked for the FBAA, how many doors can you open? How many, it's kind of like with Bill Nelson and the whole NASA thing. He got right into this topic in his opening press conference. What's in your closet, Bill? So what's in the FAA's closet? That's what we need to know.
And we know it's definitely something regarding Chicago O'Hare in there, because it was uncovered by a journalist in Chicago back in the day. But your thoughts on that, Josh Rutledge? So once again, he mentioned the safety of flight concern, FAA not tracking UAP, apparently FAA putting lives at risk every day, and then having the former director of the FAA step out and say, we're absolutely not alone on this earth. What were your thoughts? How did you package that?
Yep. So we've talked about it on the show before for similar type things in the past. One of the things that I understand the reason why, but I don't appreciate, especially in a documentary like this, is the continuation of the threat narrative. It's one thing to say it on the congressional floor, because that's where funding gets appropriated, and funding is going to get appropriated for, things that are a potential threat. But if the purpose of the documentary is to educate those that are on the fringe, then all inclusion of that type of information does is continue kind of a narrative of fear. And at some point in time in the documentary, I think it might have been Stratton was talking about how we're a pretty, aggressive and dangerous species. So the last thing you would want to do is continue a narrative of fear when fear causes us to lash out and do dumb things. So, that's one thing. Number two, I thought it was really interesting to learn that the FAA no longer uses radar to track aircraft. They only use transponders. So if an aircraft is what they use, squawking, then they know about it. But if it's not, then they don't. So I thought that was really interesting because who knows what's moving around in the sky? Like, to me, that causes even a larger threat than just UAP. We know that a lot of military aircraft don't squawk. So, yeah.
May I, Rob, respond
Sure.
to that, if you don't mind?
Yeah.
Josh makes an excellent point that we don't know what's flying in our sky. Okay. But if you talk to people who've worked in the black ops, they're laughing at most of us in this subject. The reason why is they know what's ours and what isn't ours. And the problem that we have is due to the security that we talked about earlier, even guys who are in this film don't have the clearance to know what's flying at Area 51 or 29 Palms or other secret bases. So they could be calling it UAP, UFO, whatever they want, but in reality, somewhere on that craft, there is a United States Air Force insignia. Okay. And they will never know about it because they don't have the clearance to know. Okay. And I think that's part of the problem. And Josh nails the head with the whole example of fear mongering on this subject. Shouldn't, before these guys go out in public and say, these are a threat. These are going to hurt somebody, where they're going to start taking down airlines. We've heard them all, from Ryan Graves right to Lou Elizondo and everybody else. Okay. But if they don't know what is actually American and flying in American airspace in areas where these craft should not be, whether or not you believe the Tic Tac, some people believe it's alien, some people believe that those craft have been seen at secret bases. Okay, that's just an example. But you might be looking at a very, very different conversation if these gentlemen actually knew what was flying secretively.
Okay, I can see that, but here's where I'll kind of push back on that, because I think the way it should be framed is that we've had incidents of whatever they are, if they're alien or if they're government tech or black projects, whatever they are, they've shut off these planes, the electronics. We've had accidents happen with military jets. We just had something crash over at Area 51, literally not even a month ago. Something, they won't say what it was. But then also we have the audio of Fred Valentic also encountering something, government tech or extraterrestrial, doesn't really matter because he's no longer here. And so when we know that they have the ability to affect it, whether extraterrestrial or not, the FAA is aware of these things being up there and them affecting these craft or our craft in the skies. So we don't really need to have an incident where one of these things takes down a jumbo jet with 250 people aboard. We don't want to find out 35,000 feet that there are things up there that will shut off the electronics, because then that's a fail. And so I think, it's really, the FAA should be really straightforward with this, because it gives us the opportunity to decide if we want to board a plane or not. We should know that threat is there. And if I had to jump into a conspiracy lane for a moment, I would start to wonder, with that information being known, I would want to go a little deeper and want to know if some of the tragedies that have happened in the past may have been related to something like that, but then covered up by the FAA because they've been caught already holding back information as it is. So could there be incidents that have happened that we thought were malfunction or mechanical issues with the plane that actually turned out to be encounters with something up there, whether it's alien or whether it's a black project? So I think that's kind of the important reason why they need to be more straightforward about this.
So could I chime in on that real quick?
Yeah, please do. We have about 1 minute left.
Okay. So the only thing I'll say is, yes, and there's a lot of other stuff happening in our atmosphere that nobody talks about. I mean, there are EM changes happening worldwide right now because of all the solar flares that we've been getting. EM changes in the atmosphere are definitely going to have an impact on electronics, but nobody talks about that. So there's a lot of stuff that is happening that may not be attributed to let's say, I'm gonna take away UAP, let's say alien or ET or an interdimensional craft, that could still be natural phenomena that has an impact on all electronics. So I don't like the idea or the thought process of we have electronics shutdowns while we're flying. There may be UAP in the area. Maybe the UAP caused the electronic shutdowns. And I know that's not what you're trying to say, Rob, but I think that just is, if we were treating this like a true subject where science and investigatory bodies across the globe were actually tracking things and looking into it and doing investigations, true investigations, I think some things would be UAP, but I think a lot of other things would be natural phenomena that causes issues.
I think them stepping forward is them opening up that conversation to have that maybe some of this stuff is related, and maybe more comes from that. But we'll be back talking about UFOs, The Age of Disclosure, the documentary by Dan Farah, right after the break. We'll see you in 5 minutes.
You're listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio.
You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
right, clear. See you guys in 5.
Hey, Rob.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio After Hours Radio Show, after hour number 3. We're getting ready to come back from radio in about 15 seconds here, and we'll have these guys at least for the next 30 minutes, and I'll let them go, and we'll get some Steve Stockton on the back half of the hour and UFO Weird News starting here in 5 seconds here, guys. Appreciate you guys as well, man. Thanks for coming in. All right, everybody, welcome to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show. We're in the 3rd hour. We've been talking about The Age of Disclosure because it just came out. It's a documentary. I recommend people go see whatever way you could see it. Definitely do it and then give your thoughts and impressions right here. Leave it in the comment if you're watching this later on. We'd love to read those. Any of this conversation, you can go back and rewind. The archives don't cost you a dime. YouTube.com/Spaced Out Radio. So we saved the best piece for last. I think the biggest piece, and Drew, you kind of spoke to this a little bit earlier, which was the legacy program, right? So this, and I thought that was cool because we hear the term legacy program, but I'm glad they went into detail and started to explain it. They gave us this graph here. Dan Farah, please don't strike us for this. I know this is copyright of your show, I'm sure, but I wanted the visual here just so people could see how this breakdown was. I thought this was so awesome. So they showed this during the documentary, and they theorized, and more so, I think maybe more than theorized, the fact that likely the agencies involved in the legacy program, which is this the UFO program that's been there since the beginning, the cover-up element of this would be the CIA at the head, where they, and we'll talk about why they put that there, but also who's surprised by the DOE? When we've heard numerous things about DOE, we'll get into that. Who's surprised by defense contractors? I don't think nobody here is. And then, of course, last but not least, the United States Air Force, who has been radio silent, mind you, this entire time. Lou Elizondo comes out in 2017. I think there has been one person who came out who used to be in the Air Force, but the Air Force themselves as a current working entity has not come out and added anything to this conversation, though they have said in this documentary that they have been in the same training areas as the Navy, who have, we know, famously reported the Tic Tac and all these other objects. So this part of the documentary hits. What was your, feeling about them laying out the diagram of what the legacy program is? We'll start with you, Josh.
Yeah, I thought it was really, really good to see. And it doesn't surprise me, honestly, for the CIA and the United States Air Force. It's something that I, kind of figured out a few years ago, is that shortly after Roswell, the CIA and the U.S. Air Force were established. And supposedly the Roswell events, all the crash recovery details were all sent to what is now Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is where, the headquarters or home of United States Air Force was at the time, and I think still is. So yeah, it was great seeing this diagram again, just to what I said earlier, just to have a visual to go along with the words that were being said. And then the Department of Energy, although I would have probably not considered them before, like I have heard it mentioned before in other interviews and things from other folks, but it does make sense that they would be there, because like what's said in the documentary, it's full of a bunch of people who have an intimate knowledge of nuclear type power, and there is definitely an interest in a lot of UAP in our nuclear capabilities, or at least our nuclear technologies. So I think that makes sense. But I do think, in my opinion, probably since the 70s, if not maybe the 60s even, that a lot of it has shifted over the years to almost probably 100% of it now falling mostly within defense contractors, simply for the reason that they are not FOIA-able. So they can hide stuff almost in plain sight, and nobody can do anything to gain any information about it.
And I think that was the whole idea. I think with this diagram, essentially they are saying that everything is being held within the defense contractors, but the people in the know and the people who know about the programs and know about the crash retrievals are individuals, they stated, not necessarily the director of the CIA, but the person underneath the director, like those lifetime or lifelong uh individuals who hold those positions where they're not voted in and out and on a rotating basis. And then also Department of Energy. Now let's talk about that, because we know, like, a couple of years ago when David Grush came out with his testimony, he was immediately attacked, as everybody knew he would be, by a reporter named Ken Klippenstein, whichever way you want to pronounce it. Which we found out during that time period that his father, Steve Klippenstein, I think is his name, works for the Department of Energy. And they were like, oh, just so happens your father works for the DOE, and here is his son playing a part in what seems to be disinformation or trying to slander the name of a whistleblower. And so they figured out maybe that's a direct link to the Department of Energy actively attempting to kind of obfuscate the narrative in the story. And then obviously we look to the right of that. United States Air Force, as I said before, has not included themselves in anything, and they have theories that the crash recovery teams they were mentioning during this documentary are housed within the United States Air Force, which makes total sense, because they're not going to speak on their engagements on the fact that they're engaging these things. And that's been, the tale the entire time, and that it's all headed and being puppet stringed and controlled by the CIA. So with that being laid out like that, I wish we would have had this graphic when I first came into the subject, because this would have been super helpful, so I can understand how helpful this is going to be for new people to come in and kind of just already have the puzzle put together. What did you think about that presentation of this piece, Drew Banky?
I think it was great, and I think this visual is very great because it lets you see, like, in plain writing, legacy program. This was one of the first programs that they put together for disinformation programs. Like, this is the disinformation program. This is the original one, and what they named it, the legacy program, speaks volumes. If you look at the whole picture of what the implications are and where their mind at is by having this. I think they knew from the get-go of how deep it is. I think before this program was even made, that they knew the implications of what this would be one day. And to go down to the defense contractors, that leaves that there's that open. That's a big window. The other two, the Department of Energy and the Air Force, that they're a group of people, but that center one, it could mean anyone. It could mean any defense contractors, like, that's been out there. So it's it opens up a lot of questions to, how many situations are not being reported on. They talk about the disinformation. Elon Musk has been interviewed several times, and he's been directly asked about aliens several times, and he says he doesn't have anything, doesn't know anything about it. But we do know that this film, there was a private viewing for around 60 high-ranking NASA officials and government officials. There were 60 people that attended that filming. I think it was back at the beginning of the year sometime. But 12 of those 60 people were from Space Force, and Dan Farah was there in the room while they were viewing it, and he stated that he was watching the reactions of the people from Space Force, and none of their reactions showed anything that they were surprised by any of this information put out in this. So that's telling me that the Space Force, there's who knows what they've. Maybe that would fall under defense contractors. Like, I would have to assume maybe that in some way, how it's structured, maybe they fall under defense contractors. So,
Who's Space Force?
Yeah.
Well, Space Force is the Air Force essentially. They're within the same thing.
Not Space Force, SpaceX. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
So there was in this group there was 60 people viewing this, and out of that 60, 12 of them were SpaceX, and none of them showed any signs that they were surprised by any of this information put out.
Well, it's apparent. We know that, and I actually talked about this. I did a show on NASA earlier, and talking about how when they come out, they say they never seen anything, never seen nothing weird, nothing at all. Everything's normal stuff. But Kevin Day sees things coming in from 80,000 feet and dropping to sea level, which we know those things are coming in from space. So if we see these things coming in from space all the time, that automatically means NASA definitely is aware of these things coming in from space. There's just not a world where it could be possible that they don't know. And that's the same thing with SpaceX. And that's why most people believe, even though Elon Musk says he's never seen anything or that there's nothing to it, that we already know you're first of all connected with the government, and you're getting government money and contracts, or attempting to. So we already know that we know that because we see them coming in. So we know that that's what's going on there. And to other piece to that, where you're talking about the defense contractors, like it could be anybody. There's so many different ones. But I've been pointed to the direction of Plant 42, which is on Edwards Air Force Base. And I've done a show about that as well. There's a section of Edwards Air Force Base called Plant 42, where their Lockheed Martin Skunk Works is currently located, where they have McDonnell Douglas is there. NASA has a building there. Boeing has a building there. They're all there, and it's Plant 42. And that's where it's believed that all this stuff is taking place. And I have already vowed to go out once I can be funded to do so. So if you want to fund me to go out there, I'll go. It's about 100 miles from where I'm at. And I intend on going out to the fence line, because you can literally get right up to the fence line. All these buildings, there's a map that shows you which building is thought to be which. And it's right on the other side of the fence. Very visible right there. And I think we talked about that, Josh, going on out there. And that's definitely still something that we need to do, because the next step in this question is, where are the bodies? And I think that's kind of where we're at. And actually, I'm doing a show on my channel, Social Dig, tomorrow, titled "Where's the Bodies?" I wanted to get this one out the way, because I think that is the next part of the conversation. And the other piece is, they kind of confirmed during this documentary that the very thought that I had, that they have strike teams, essentially dispatch teams, essentially within the Air Force, that are positioned in places where they can react immediately in the event of a UFO crash and get right to the scene, before anyone else, to kind of do the retrieval. Because they also talked about there being a war, essential war over UFOs and recovering them, in the race to recover them. Like if they go down in the ocean or somewhere in international territories, other countries are trying to go there and send their strike teams to go pick it up too. So there's like a unseen war of different countries attempting to go make sure they're the ones that recover the tech. What do you think about that? It's obvious, I think, obviously, but what do you think about that, Josh?
No, I agree. I mean, it's, I've talked about it kind of more anecdotally in the past, about how the U.S. seems to really be the only ones that have like contact and, crash type stories in its, in its social ethos rather. And so I do think, though, that, it's probably happening worldwide. I even think, I think somebody even alluded to it. Maybe Hal Puthoff alluded to it in the documentary. Like, is it a matter of, give the major players of the world access to the tech and see who figures it out first? It's like a rat in a maze situation, just to see which one of us will figure it out first, and which one of us will figure it out first and choose not to use it in a negative way, right? As a weapon or in weaponry or whatever the case may be. Which part of the world is evolving, if you will, a more ethical and social accountability mindset over other parts of the world, so on and so forth. So yeah, I agree completely. There are definitely other countries that are looking into it. Um, and we are in a kind of an arms race, if you will, for who's going to be the first ones to figure out not only how it works, but how do we make it work?
Definitely. That's awesome. Awesome analogy or conclusion there. How about you, Drew Banky? Your thoughts, the secret war, the race for all these different countries to get to the spot of the crash craft, and it's like who gets there first, and what do you
Well,
think about that whole thing?
I think the whole basis behind that goes back to this graph that you have on here, and it goes back to the Department of Energy. You know, they touched on a little bit about they suspect that these crafts are flying from using zero point energy, and I would suspect that some of that classified stuff that Elizondo and others are talking about that they would love to share, they can't share because it's classified. I would be willing to bet the farm on it that, and that's literally I have a farm, but I would bet the farm on it that a lot of that classified information has to do with how the crafts move. And because if whoever the first one people are that can really harness zero part energy, if we haven't already, the timeline is 20 years out. Whatever we're seeing in the public now, we're 20 years behind what's actually going on. So there's a great possibility that we've already been able to harness zero part energy and use it. So I would believe that that is the main concern of, it's known. I mean, I don't think it's I agree, and I don't think I think there's a race for every occurrence that comes down, but I think it goes back to energy. I would definitely theorize that it goes back to energy.
That's a great point. I'm glad you pointed that out as well. And this is obviously we saved this for almost last because I think if once again, if I was just coming into this subject, I would want to know this. This is where I'd want to, like the structure, the backbone of how this works. And then we branch out from there. This is going to be so awesome for people just coming in. And I really feel like this is going to be a great tool. And it's not just pumping up the documentary like I have a stake in it, but I'm just serious. When I see something and someone has accomplished, something that moves us in the right direction, then I have to give the props. I have to do it. You know what I mean? And I always do it. And some people may feel differently about the documentary. That's why you're able to put your comments in the chat tonight. But the last thing I wanted to end off with, which I think was another awesome piece of this and also integral to getting the full story out there, is Gary Nolan, who I did email out to, and they did reply back, stated he's kind of booked up this year. Hopefully we get him here early next year. But he did say in the documentary, he was talking about the medical effects from being in close proximity to these craft, which I think is a warning really for individuals that may walk up on a boogosphere or something that comes off of alien tech that you may just happen to walk up on and get to the site before the government does, and letting you know that there are people that have measurable results that prove that they've been in contact with something that did had an adverse effect. And the statement was from Gary Nolan, which I think was awesome, was we can argue about the conclusion, but we can't argue that the data is real. When he was talking about comparing this with other scientists, like because of the whole stigma of 99%, not wanting to look at this seriously or thinking it's real. But he states we can argue about the conclusion of this. We're not saying what's what, but we can't argue about what the data is. So what was that statement to you? What were your thoughts on his opinion on that, Drew Banky?
Well, I mean, he repeat the question. I'm sorry.
Gary Nolan said we can argue about the conclusion, but we can't argue that the data is real
For sure.
pertaining to contact with these craft.
Talking about the effects from people. That segues into what I definitely wanted. One of my show notes that I had here from watching the show. I I agree with it, and I think the data was put forward in a very matter of fact way. Here it is. This is what we know. We don't know all of it, but this is what we do know. And I agree. Like, we have to look at. I think it's going to open up a lot of other scientists that maybe weren't open to looking at it, that we're going to have to start figuring this out, because it's going to be part of our story. It's going to be part of the human story. This is already a part of human story, regardless of where it goes from here. But it segues into what I want to mention before we get off here. He was talking, there was mention, and I can't remember if this was mentioned in the doc or if it was in the interview with Rogan, but he mentioned that some of these abilities that he's come across from these interviews are extra like telepathy and telekinesis, things like that. And that was some of the stuff that was cut out of there, because he didn't want to go down that route. He just wanted this to be like more of a factual type of thing. And this is he didn't want to go into the woo, but he said that this is a very important thing, and this is going to be part of what possibly might be the next installment of this thing. But going down the rabbit hole of what happens to people after they're seeing a craft or being taken aboard a craft or stuff like that, what's the residuals of it? And what I find interesting is the positive residuals of it. People talk about burn marks and things like that. He also mentioned orbs of people that interacting with not only the people that were doing these investigations, like on ATIP, things like that, but their family members. And he stated specifically about one instance where a son of one of these investigators was basically assaulted by an orb, and there was basically a bruise that all over the front, like his whole chest and front of his upper torso was a bruise from an orb that was encountered inside their own home. So this brings up another question: is this from us, or is this from them?
Definitely. And that's a great place to put a bow on that. Josh Rellis, what is your thoughts on that? The whole exposure and the statement that Dr. Gary Nolan made there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's 100% true. Like you said, the data exists and cannot be argued with. Like you said, that what ultimately caused it. I even think what ultimately caused it. Somebody could come along and say, well, 4 out of 5 doctors agree it was caused by exposure to high radiation. The question becomes, what was the source of the high radiation, right? So even there's probably some agreement on what what the data tells us. There just may not be agreement on what the what the source of that data might be. So that's one piece. The other little piece, because I know we're about to wrap up for this half hour, I wanted to call out and say I think the documentary is missing one key element. If this is truly meant, like we've talked about, for those fringe people, it's missing a call to action. They should have closed off with, if you've watched this and you think this is a subject worth discussing, contact your congressperson today, and then have like a on-screen thing for how you can go and find. There's many different websites set up for how you can go and find who your congressperson is, because that's the key element that's missing, is identified public engagement. And if this documentary is hoped to stimulate some of those identified discussions, then the next step is a call to action.
I could agree. I would like to see that, and maybe that's what the additional footage is going to go towards. Maybe they ended it that way because they knew they were coming right back with some part 2 or some separate project, or maybe just in addition to the addendum to the current project. We don't know, but it's been interesting, and I definitely recommend people go watch it. We watched it, and these were our thoughts and impressions. So we definitely appreciate everybody coming in and joining this show with us here tonight. We want to thank Drew Banky and Josh Rutledge for coming in and being part of this panel. Always awesome. 2 more likes if we can get that, it'd be awesome as well. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show. Also want to thank Dave Scott. I gotta forget Dave Scott. Thanks for everything, Davey. Appreciate you. We'll be right back after the break. All right, we are clear. And yes, 2 more likes, guys, if we could. I don't know where we're at because I can't see it, but Tamothman says 2. Or no, his goatee says 2. Tamothman's goatee says 2. And I agree with Tamothman's goatee. So please make sure you go ahead and do that for us here. And yeah, so guys, obviously this is just, we're still on live here. I'm going to come back after break and run some Steve Stockton Tells Untold and then finish it off with the news story. So once again, appreciate you guys coming in. Do you have anything you want to just talk about or leave the audience with during this break?
No, for those who haven't seen the Rogan with the director, do it. I'm not trying to sell Rogan. I talk about him all the time, but the interview on there was very, very telling, and it added a lot of information to the documentary. He talks about remote viewing specifically is going to be covered in, if he does another one, remote viewing specifically is going to be covered as part of that. So that's, I'm more excited about that one than I am this one.
I actually was staying away from the Dan Farah stuff, like the appearance. I think he's on Rogan, and then I wanted to watch this first and then consume that content. So I guess I'll be watching that this weekend.
I did for sure, and it's crazy because I messaged him while I'm watching the interview with Rogan. I'm like, I got on all his socials. I sent him private messages. I'm like, hey, I have some things that's happened to me. I got some things that I can do. I believe are from that experience. And about 15 minutes after that, he said verbatim on that. That's the focus of the next show. So whether I'm involved in it or not, it's going to be exciting. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, he's put a lot of work into it, and his whole view on things, like could you imagine putting together that documentary, what we didn't get to see, what the conversations we didn't get to see, man, he's, you can just tell from, when he was talking, his mind's been blown.
And I think there was great balance there. I think it was put together very nicely. It didn't feel top heavy, or it felt just right when, being a 2-hour documentary on top of that. So I felt like it did its job. It served its purpose, and it would be something I would recommend someone just coming in to see it. Say, hey, go watch that Age of Disclosure. That'll kind of bring you up to speed. Your last thoughts on that, Josh, before we get you guys out of here?
Yep. No, I agree. It is a good, there's like 3 books that I always recommend to people that are just getting into looking into this kind of stuff. And so for those that are not avid readers, because not a lot of people are, this is, I think, a good replacement for those 3 books. And, like 2 of the books I'll say is, one is, the one with what's her name, Leslie Kean, about generals go on the record. I can't think of the title thing of the book, but and then the other one is Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, that talks about the ALSET program and the ATIP program. But those 2, and then a third one that I usually recommend. And then but I think this is a good documentary version of the content that's covered in those 3 books that if somebody's not really a big reader, this covers the bases. The other piece I wanted to say is I wanted to ask, if we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but if it was offered for the legacy program, those involved in the legacy program to receive immunity for any actions they may have taken while a part of the legacy program, if it meant that all the truth came out, I wonder who all would support that action.
Yeah, awesome. You might as well stay for 5 minutes and ask that after the break.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I think that should be added to the conversation.
Okay.
Sure. Let me see.
I'm out of here, guys.
All right, Drew Banky, appreciate you coming in, man.
Much love to the chat, man. It was lit, and I'm sure we are over 100 now. Talk to you later.
All right, man. Take care. All right. Let's see. All right, got about 20 seconds here. Jay True Seeker, I see you snuck in the back door. Appreciate you coming in. Country Carpenter as well. Thanks for coming in. Jessica McCreary, I see you as well. Didn't see you guys earlier, so thanks for coming on in. Bob Thorson as well. 3 seconds, 2 seconds. Here we go. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, After Hours Radio Show. We're on the back half of hour 3. We are now just left with myself and Josh Rutledge standing in, talking Age of Disclosure, the documentary by Dan Farah. Covered some really good stuff. I think we both feel that it was really a nice package for new people coming in the community. So anyone that's interested in UFOs, recommend this to them. I think it'd be pretty awesome if we jump back in the conversation. As we were talking during break, Josh, there was a bow that you kind of wanted to put on this entire situation before you go, and definitely want you to do that on record. So take it away.
Yeah, I was just thinking, if anybody involved with the legacy program, if they were to pass some sort of legislation that said anybody involved has immunity as long as they're willing to go on the record about everything they know as being part of the legacy program. I just wondered if people would support that type of action.
I don't have any animosity against these people, right? We all want to just get to the truth. Mistakes were made, definitely could have been more transparent, more forthcoming. And the reason why I feel that way is because, as we talked about earlier, it's shown that NDAs are being forced on individuals. And so some of these people may have been in that situation where they didn't really, they could have just kept the secret and not really talked about it, but they were forced to sign the NDA. So they were kind of put in a position where they had to kind of stay in that orbit. And you can't choose who, did it intentionally, who signed them intentionally and was okay with this versus who got pushed into it or forced into it. So if you can't differentiate between the two, the only right thing to do is to take that approach with the amnesty. So I'm with it 100%. Paramarv and I forget, I definitely said I was going to have the audience questions. So I'm going to just bring up their statements here while I still have you here, Josh. Maybe
Sure.
you chime in on a couple of these things. So Paramarv jumped out and said, I will support that. Truth needs to come out and we need to course correct ASAP, which is, I think, a great idea as well. Good sentiment. I'm going to read because I got 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 of these. Oop, nope, actually more, about 10, 12 of these. So let's start here. Brad Lomas. Oh, Dave, be brave. This is for you, Dave. If you happen to be watching, Dave, be brave. Everyone, especially, please don't tell us that the government can show us the craft they have and are currently trying to reverse engineer. The public will be fine. And that kind of goes along with what we were talking about. Do you have an opinion on that statement? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think generally the public will be fine, but I do think, like you said, there are ramifications to disclosure. And in my opinion, it all started with the Brookings report back in '66 when they said, hey, the public isn't ready to know. And I think from that point forward, there has been a slow, like glacier movement, slow attempt at, getting to the point of letting the public know. But I still think, the big question is going to be, if let's say we parade out the craft, or even if we fly one and we say, here it is, somebody, and I think a lot of people are going to start asking, well, what does that thing run on? Does it run on fuel or, and that's going to lead to the question around how much we really need to rely on fossil fuels and all that kind of stuff. So I think until the people have drained the fossil fuel system dry, as far as, monetarily speaking, no one's going to be interested in really letting the public see anything that might sway their opinion on fossil fuels.
And that's a damn shame because I remember when I used to pay over $5 a gallon for this fossil fuel. So I've been ready for free energy. We need that like yesterday. So appreciate that comment here. And let's see. We had Matt Gutka having an opinion here saying it was awesome. It was an awesome movie, especially for those who are new to this and what is going on. For us, it's more like a recap.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Let's see. We got good question, Super Crazy Movie Geek. What happened to volume 2 of that last of the Arrow historical UAP report? It ain't coming. That's what I'm gonna say.
They haven't hit their. Did they hit their deadline? I don't think they hit their deadline yet.
I don't know what the deadline is. What's the deadline?
I think it's like January, February next year is their deadline.
I just.
But even if it comes out, it's not going to be like they're probably going to say, yeah, we got more unknown reports, and these are the ones that were known, and here's what the explanation of the ones that were known were. But I mean, we're never going to get like what we're really after in any of those reports.
And it has to be, the thing is that it's Arrow, man. And they got the new guy in there, and John Koslowski, I think his name is this. And there's a lot of people out there that have been pretty optimistic on him handling this and thinking that and I've seen him in different interviews where he's kind of answered the question like he was maybe going to kind of be straightforward with the data. But okay, well, you could probably start by being straightforward with the data, the previous data, the data under Kirkpatrick. That's sitting right there. You could already just kind of be transparent with that while you're working on the new stuff. And I just haven't seen any movement. So I'm not really feeling too good about that.
He was on an episode of Star Talk with Neil deGrasse Tyson a couple months back. And he hinted at the possibility of them launching a public website for people to log their reports, saying that they don't care necessarily, they don't validate whether the person is honest in their response. All they care about is capturing the details and the data and then letting the evidence speak for itself. So, I mean, it'll be refreshing if they are actually working towards that activity.
Yes, agreed. Let me see here. Okay, Super Crazy again, real quick, saying I enjoyed hearing them talk about there possibly being a space-time warp bubble around UAP craft. Yeah, awesome that you put that in there. I forgot to even bring that up. That was pretty awesome. It definitely makes sense. And then they talked about, when you're taking pictures of these UFOs, you're looking through that, and that's why they're always blurry. It makes sense. Because I've seen pictures of planes taken by cameras, and you can make out what it is. You can see the shape of it. You can make out the lines on it, windows and things of that nature. But for some reason, these things are definitely always blurry. So it makes total sense. What do you think?
No, yeah, I agree. And it's not a new theory. It's something I've heard before, but it was nice to hear it documented, in this, film. And so,
visualized.
Again, yeah, it was a good visualization. I will give it that. Even how it showed how the like radar and things may just kind of form around the bubble and not actually send a return, and that's why it doesn't get returned in radar stuff. So yeah, it was really cool.
Made good sense, and I'm hoping that's coming more from a theoretical place. Hopefully, it's something that they have come to a conclusion based on data.
Hal Puthoff actually has a paper out about it that you can look up and read. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Send me that link when you get the chance. I'd definitely love to do that. Let me see. Okay. Andrew B was like, what was uncovered in Chicago? It was the whole Chicago O'Hare 2006 UFO sitting right over the tarmac, middle of the day. It sat there for like 5, 10, 15 minutes and then just shot up through the clouds, left a hole in the clouds. It was covered up by the FAA. It was reported by pilots, grounds crew, all these different individuals who had gone to their airline and in turn FAA to report the stuff. When the reporter reached out to got wind of it and reached out to the FAA, FAA said, we never heard anything. No one's ever come to us and reported anything. Come to find out, he dug a little deeper and found out that was an absolute lie, and that they had all come forward and said something to the FAA, which they had to turn around and finally admitted at that point. So once again, that's one of the situations where if they lied once, you obviously know they've lied many times and are definitely part of the cover up. So look that up, Andrew. It's a good one if you're unfamiliar. Chicago O'Hare UFO. Let's see. All right, we got Miss Catherine Jones saying, I think we should also make ourselves available for people undergoing ontological shock, which is, I agree. What do you think about that, Josh?
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, I would, I would even love to see somebody put together like a, some sort of a website where people who are in the community can sign up to be like mentors for people who are just now becoming interested in the topic. Have somebody to talk to about just general questions, or you could even have on the website, here's some great shows that are not, they're not overly believe heavy, but they're also not overly skeptic heavy, and here's some stuff to go check out, like almost like a like a UAP certificate or something. You can go out there and you like, here's the stuff you need to know in order to know all the stuff that you might want to know about the UAP topic. Like, it just, because it is going to be a little bit of drinking from the fire hose for a lot of people, and not really having direction on where to go. And so it'd be great if, like, even if it's part of like Age of Disclosure, if they had a section on their website for like, so you think you might have seen a UAP. Here's where to get started. Here's some books to read. Here's some shows to watch, so on and so forth. You want to get involved with a group to talk about it. Here's a couple of links for that. Like, I think it would just be significant if they would provide some sort of a community support for the folks that are going to start drinking from the fire hose.
Awesome input there. And Miss Catherine actually adds to this was part of the other conversation. We're talking about George Bush being briefed, or the Secretary of Treasury being briefed, Mnuchin. That was for W. But then aside from that, Miss Catherine Jones is correct. George H.W. Bush also had a briefing way early on that was also addressed during that documentary. It's just action. It's just information packed, man. I'm definitely glad that he had the mindset to do that. That's how I put my shows together. When I do shows on my channel, it's not worth it just talking about the one thing. Let's put things together so we could see a bigger picture. Because when you look at it like that, you're like, wow, I never saw it like that, or I never thought about it like that. And it's all about thinking. Let me see. Lester Jules says, y'all need to get Ted Rowe on again, NARCAP guy and other government early reporting agency stuff. I will make sure that we keep an eye on that, and I'll definitely be doing that for you, Lester Jules, because we appreciate you, and you're our sister, right? So 3 more comments here we had, and these couple good ones from actually Hillbilly Herb. This is funny. Threat was mentioned a ton of times in the doc. Could be a drinking game. Maybe we'll have to do that next time we watch it. That's awesome. Hillbilly Herb. Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe we need a UAP documentary bingo card.
I like that. Oops. Oh, wow. Okay. I had a question there that I just missed. Let me just do this. These are the last 2. Actually, Super Crazy Movie Geek has been coming hot with them. And he says here, let me see. Let's do this one first. 1, do you think the average viewers who don't follow the topic at all are going to be shocked at anything in the documentary? If yes, exactly what? What would be something maybe you would think?
Probably just, if I were to say, probably the number of people who went on the record to talk about it, and then the discussion around the legacy program.
Awesome. And I feel, and I agree with that. And I'll go one further and say, I saw extraterrestrial beings and UFOs, like statement like that, and then the species statement. Because I know for me, when I first was started getting aware of this, it was an article put out where, or a report where they said off-world vehicles, and I read that, and then I was like, wait a minute, I read that again, off-world vehicles. Okay, that means UFOs. That means something that wasn't built here. And then, so I was shocked by that when I heard that statement. So if I had heard, or was able to see this documentary in the beginning, I would have been shocked by a couple things, and that would have been the species. I never would have thought that. And then also the fact that this guy right here has seen them personally, and also the UFO craft. Mind blowing. And then the other thing,
I was going to say, I'm looking forward to when it is a category on Jeopardy.
Coming soon. It's going to be a part of our normal, conversation for sure, which will be a good day. And Super Crazy Movie Geek, do you think the gatekeepers of the Legacy program will literally unalive someone and their families if they talk about the program? What do you say to that, Josh?
Maybe. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them.
And I'll say David Grush testified under oath that has actually been the case. Super Crazy Movie Geek. So I'm going to say yes. Bob Lazar, and I think in this whole situation, they talk about talking to the wife or something, or saying, hey, your wife travels from here to there, and, it's lonely on those dark roads, and those sorts of underlying passive aggressive sort of threats. Yeah, they're doing that. You can best believe. And if you want, I think there's proof out there right now that the government unalives individuals whenever they feel the need to. And Lou Elizondo said in the documentary, for sure that they do that.
Yeah, I was going to say, Lou called it out. Yeah.
So with that being said, man, that has been awesome. We were able to get through the questions too, man. Thank you, Josh, for staying for that. Where can everybody find you, sir?
Yep, you can find all of my stuff on my website, ourmysticjourneys.com. That's OUR mysticjourneys.com.
You heard him. Make sure you guys go and support Josh Rutledge. And he's here all the time. So if you didn't catch it now, you'll catch him next time. Josh, appreciate you coming in, man. You were awesome,
thanks,
dude.
Man.
We'll talk again later. Josh Rutledge, ladies and gentlemen. And I think we had an awesome show here. I think we were very, laid out review of Age of Disclosure. I feel good about it. And, that's kind of what we have to do here. So still, at the end of the day, we definitely talked about a lot. We covered a lot. We want to appreciate Matt Gutka for your support of the show as well. Also, Kitty Catty Whack, thank you so much. And we're going to go ahead and jump into a quick news story before we go ahead and get out of here. Shift a little bit. So UFO and weird news, here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. But I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
All right, guys, UFO and weird news of the week. And we're going to go with this story here. A woman who claims that she is an alien. If you remember last night, we talked about a guy who has been doing these body tattoos to turn himself into a black alien, which is not black as in racial, as in he's actually using a black pigmented ink and covering his entire body. He's cut off his nose. He's altered his mouth. It's wild. But that, and had dermal implants, which is crazy in itself. I think I've seen him on TV. But this woman who claims she is an alien has terrifying proof that they exist. So Rosanna Hannes claims to be a star seed. Not too bad, right? We hear that often, from Pleiades star in the constellation of Taurus. All right, okay. I think this is our conversation here. A woman has explained how she found, quote, sudden clarity that she's actually an alien from 400 light years away, along with the proof of her extraterrestrial origins. When it comes to proving the existence of aliens, most people look to the skies in search of UFOs, flying saucers, or even badly behaving comets. However, one woman believes that proof of extraterrestrial life lies much closer to home, more specifically inside herself. For Brighton based Rosanna Hannes, she says she has evidence aliens exist, as she herself is a visitor from the outer cosmos who is living on Earth in human form. Now, this may sound a little similar to the plot of Yorgos Lanthimos and Emma Stone's latest flick, Begonia. However, Hannah says she can prove her claims. Speaking about her beliefs in an interview with The Sun, Hannah explained that she would often experience spooky and vivid dreams at a young age, including a premonition that her uncle had passed away. Quote, I've had vivid dreams where I was soaring high above buildings, open country, and ocean. It was so vivid, it felt like it was real, she explained. The dreams didn't frighten me. In fact, I loved them. But when I told my friends about them, they seemed confused. However, it wasn't until she was introduced to a spiritual teacher as a teenager in a form of therapy known as rebirthing, which uses various breathing techniques to simulate being born, that she put the extraterrestrial dots together. Recalling the moment, Hannah said, one evening when I was 14, I went over to her spiritual center after school. Closing my eyes, I let her guide me into a rebirthing, breathing state before gradually accessing my memories of birth. Quote, to my astonishment, I experienced a sudden clarity that I had been sent here from another planet. It was here that Hannah began to realize that her dreams were likely astral projections, and that her dreams of spaceships and hairless humanoids. She later concluded that she was something known as a starseed, an alien soul which lives inside the human body, sent to Earth in order to help guide aliens. As for her homeworld, Hannah says she is part of a species who live in the Pleiades star, 440 light years from Earth, and are more technologically advanced than humans. She says these benevolent spacefarers are also peaceful and loving, which makes a huge change from the typical depictions of hostile aliens. She said, my memories have been wiped before traveling to Earth to help me acclimate, but I knew what I needed to do on Earth, overcome my own challenges and teach others through my example. That would apparently be through her yoga and emotional detoxing. It's my job to help others get in touch with their highest self and fulfill their soul purpose, she continued. When my clients' emotions and mindsets are creating blocks, I help them identify and release the trapped emotions and limiting beliefs causing problems in their lives. So, with that being said, that might align with a lot of people. I'm totally unaware if that could be or factual or not, but there are definitely people out there who would know if that resonates with them. So let us know. Leave it in the comment. Once again, we want to thank our guest for tonight. We want to thank actually the age of disclosure, because I think it's a big piece of the puzzle and something that I think is going to help the conversation moving forward, make it easier to talk to these people out there who are just coming on into the conversation. So we want to thank Dan Farah for doing that, Lou Elizondo as well. We also want to thank Josh Rutledge, Drew Banky. We also want to thank Davey Scott for coming on in. Also, the man that you hear right there, Ron Bumblefoot. He's the man that rocks us in and out of every show, telling us to never say never again, because obviously, yes, the phenomena is very real. And because of that, anything and everything beneath that is possible. If you enjoyed the show tonight, make sure you hit that like button. Hit us over 100 tonight. We would love to have you do that. We also want to thank our viewers and listeners online and terrestrial radio and digital platforms. Thank you for tuning your frequency to Spaced Out Radio. Whenever and wherever in the world you may be listening from, we appreciate you coming in. We own the night. Remember, this show is copyright of Bigfoot Media Ventures Limited and SOR Spaced Out Radio. It's been a pleasure serving you once again as your host. I'm Mr. Rob G. This is the After Hours Radio Show. And to all you space travelers out there, it's not a goodbye nor a farewell. However, you can best believe we'll be right back here, same time, same place, doing the same thing, having conversations that move the needle. And we appreciate you guys all coming in tonight. Much love. Take care of yourself and each other. Till next time. right, we are clear, guys, and that's once again I want to thank all the super chats and all your participation in the chat tonight. You know, a lot of people have been anticipating this documentary to come out. We've been hearing about it since South by Southwest back in spring. It's been touted to be this huge big deal. I think the people that walked away from it unsatisfied were people from the community that thought for some reason they were going to get some new knowledge, but I still think some was in there. But you have to remember, this isn't really for us in this community. We know the framework. You know, this is put together as a package in like a what do you call that? Care package, like a starter kit. There we go. It's a starter kit for individuals that are just coming in the community. Everybody should get a copy of this because this brings you up to speed and allows you to get ready to have that next conversation. Like, why are they here? Why are they here? What do we do next? Those are the next conversations. Where are the bodies? We're right there now. So we'll be doing that on the social deal. We'll be having a conversation about where are the bodies as we keep moving this needle. I'm going to get up out of here, guys. You know how we shut the show down each and every time. We want retribution. We're going to get it. We're going to get retribution. And we're going to shut the show down just like that, guys. Have a great rest of your night. Take care. See you next time.
Cause we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution.